before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
At TUI, we're spreading sunshine early by giving away hundreds of thousands of free kids' places. So you can holiday with the little ones for less. Book today and spread the cost with £0 deposit when you pay with direct debit. From splash parks to swimming lessons. At TUI, we cross the T's, dot the I's, and put you in the middle. Direct debit on web bookings only. Free kids' places subject to limited availability. One free child place per 2 full paying adults. Booking T's and C's apply. At all protected.
Did you know your favorite radio stations are in your pocket? Yes, the TuneIn app lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio anywhere you want. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip Bayless.
Follow and tune in on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards, at the goal line, it's intercepted!
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown.
Search NFL today.
The gun rights rally at the Virginia State Capitol in Richmond is underway, peaceful so far during a declared state of emergency that bans weapons. That's due to credible threats coming from several militia and white supremacy groups hinting at plans to disrupt the annual event. Nick Valencia is with the crowd on the perimeter of the Capitol grounds.
The majority of the demonstrators that are here are just beyond the fence. They are outside because that's the area where you can have your weapons. There's people there with long guns, pistols on their hips, people that knew that they weren't going to be allowed into this state grounds but decided to show up anyway because they wanted to show their support for the Second Amendment.
Police say an armed security guard shot and killed a man suspected of shooting a woman to death and injuring 15 more people outside a bar in Kansas City, Missouri last night. Spacewalking astronauts tackled one last round of battery improvements outside the International Space Station today. NASA's Jessica Meyer and Christina Cook floated out to finish the work they began last week. Wall Street's closed on this Martin Luther King holiday.
And I'm Mark Mills in the Bloomberg Radio Newsroom. U.S. financial markets are closed in observance of the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday. International markets are trading on this Monday, though volume is lighter than usual. The London FTSE is down 0.2% in late afternoon trading in Europe. The DAX is up about 0.1%. The CAC 40 in Paris down 0.33%. Overnight, the Nikkei in Japan closed up 0.2%, and the Hong Kong Hang Seng Index was off by 0.9%. A pneumonia outbreak in central China has widened, with more than 200 people now diagnosed with the new SARS-like virus. As health experts say, there's now evidence that the illness is spreading from person to person. With the Chinese New Year just days away, a time of heavy traveling and family gatherings, the virus's spread may intensify. In Hong Kong, Dan Clowry, a registered nurse from San Francisco, said he's cutting a China trip short and will be monitoring his health closely.
Stay safe, keep clean, do normal precautions.
Earnings season gets back into focus when traders get back to their desks after the holiday. Netflix reports after the closing bell on Tuesday. Bloomberg's Nathan Hager has a preview.
Bloomberg Intelligence thinks Netflix will beat its own estimate of 7.6 million new subscribers in the fourth quarter, driven by blockbusters like The Witcher and the Oscar-nominated Irishman. Gene Munster with Loop Ventures tells Bloomberg outperformance will be a trend for Netflix in 2020. Nathan Hager, Bloomberg Radio.
Under the new trade pact, the U.S. may be shipping 700,000 barrels of oil a day to China. Crude oil rose following supply disruptions in Libya and Iraq. Iraq temporarily stopped output at an oil field on Sunday, while Libyan production almost ground to a halt after armed forces shut down a pipeline. Brent futures up 0.8%. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Mark Mills. This is Bloomberg.
This is Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Massar and Jason Kelly from Bloomberg Radio.
So New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy, he's heading into his third year. He did give a State of the State. I caught up with him, talked about a variety of things that are going on at the state, but we kicked things off with talking about that U.S.-China trade deal. Here's what the governor had to say.
The trade impacts us significantly. We have one of the biggest ports in the United States. And so for that reason alone, never mind our other goods and services that are made in New Jersey, I believe at its core, there are legitimate issues with China, period. And that's not to me in question. What has been in question is how we've gone about that. And I have not supported the approach to this. I would have signed on the dotted line a lot of what was negotiated, assuming labor and consumers were protected. I would have signed what the Obama administration had worked on. But having said all that, lowering the trade temperature, as you suggest, taking another distraction off the table, I think is a good thing. I'm not qualified to tell you that this is a good trade deal. Again, I look at any deal through the eyes of consumers and labor. But putting aside the specifics, anything that can lower the temperature, I think is good.
Governor, talk to us about your kind of what I see as like two objectives with this Jobs New Jersey plan, an initiative. It is about helping employers access talent. It's also about helping residents that are in New Jersey develop the skills. I hear this across the country that everyone is working on these initiatives. What specifically are you going to do to help New Jersey residents have the skills that they need for the jobs that are in demand?
Yeah, you've got it exactly right, first of all. So the notion here is this is what employers need for the economy of tomorrow. These are the employees that we're producing with the skills they've got. How can we, as seamlessly as possible, shrink the gap and make it line up as best we can? You're right, lots of places are doing this, but no place starts where we start. Number one public education system in America, highest concentration of scientists and engineers per square mile in the entire world, a diversity unlike any other American state. We just got ranked to be the smartest state in the nation. We start in a very good place. But again, getting that match to work, I can't tell you how many CEOs, board chairs I've sat with who say, listen, we love it. My first question is, where am I going to get the workforce for tomorrow? And just at this, on the other side of the coin, with recent graduates saying, listen, I feel really good about my education, but I want to make sure the skills I've got will get me the job that I want. And so our job is to make that match as best we can.
I'm understanding, of course, you guys are gradually raising the minimum wage. Small businesses are telling us that is killing them. How do you respond to that? And we know small business is always the backbone of really our nation's economy.
Yeah, by the way, our administration, for the first time, Carol, has a small business unit in our Economic Development Authority. That's never happened before. I think 60% of the employment in our state is technically by small businesses. Right. As it relates to minimum wage, one way we're doing this is we're doing it gradually. It's a 5-year glide path to $15 an hour. And that's explicitly because of the small business community. Secondly, depending on how small you are, there are carve-outs and the glide path is even longer. I can't justify having a 2-income household earning below the poverty line in New Jersey. It's unacceptable. So we had no choice but to go from $8 and something. We're now at $11, and in several years from now, we'll get to $15. It's the right thing to do. Right. I think we're doing it in a responsible way, particularly with our small businesses, and I hope we can have one of those 1 + 1 = 3 outcomes.
At the other end of the spectrum, the millionaire's tax. Got to ask you about it. You keep pushing for this millionaire's tax. It was in your State of the State. Your fellow Democrats in New Jersey seem to say it's a dead issue. Why do you keep pushing? What chance is there for success here?
Yeah, I'd say I just challenge a little bit the basis of the question. My fellow Democrats, a millionaire's tax actually in New Jersey polls in the 70s. including a wild majority of Democrats and a majority of Republicans, believe it or not. Why do we want to do it? Because it's the right thing to do. And we're not begrudging folks who have done well. There are 22,000 and something folks in this state out of 9 million who are in this category. Bless them for their success. We take our hat off to them. We want more of them. That's not the point. It's not us versus them. We want them to pay a little bit more. And the reason we want this is 2 reasons. Number one, we'll take the proceeds and we'll put it directly into the middle class. Direct middle class property tax relief and K through 12 education funding. I inherited a state where the middle class had been ravaged. We're on a 2-year run now where we are making historic investments. This will allow us to accelerate that. And in particular, property tax is the big tax burden in this state above all else.
And that's Phil Murphy, governor of the state of New Jersey, coming off of his State of the State address, talking about your home state, Carol Massar.
Right, my great home state of New Jersey. So we did talk about a lot of stuff. Trade, because it was in the news, wanted to see what the impact was on the state, but also about his mission for the millionaires tax and so much more. So fun to check in with him.
He's an interesting politician, to be
totally.
sure. You're listening to Bloomberg Businessweek. Coming up, greenhouses. They're not just for the green thumbs anymore, but you got to have a lot of green to get one in your backyard.
I saw what you did there.
Yeah.
Very nice. This is Bloomberg.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Boredom, fitness enemy number one. So don't just run. Run, run, mix it up, skip, run, skip, run. Give yourself a lift, mix it up, lift, mix it up, run, lift, splash, skip, lift, run. It's crunch time. Skip, mix it up, run, mix it out of boxing class. Skip, run, splash, skip, run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run, mix it up, skip, mix it, run. Mix it.
This is not a cat. This is not a rocket. And this is not a sale. That's right. At Smarty Mobile, we're not having a sale. While others are slashing prices, we're introducing our best ever new plans. Take our new 30-gig data SIM for just £10 a month. With unlimited calls and texts and no speed restrictions, credit checks or contract tying you down, why shop around? New plans, great value. Now that's Smarty. Grab yours today. Search Smarty Mobile. See smarty.co.uk for terms.
Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded. Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
A lot of people aren't aware that TuneIn lets you listen to the same terrestrial stations that you pick up on your FM AM dial, except you can hear them from anywhere. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
Go courtside with the NBA on TuneIn. With the NBA on TuneIn, hear your favorite team and players take on their biggest rivals during the biggest games throughout the year, including regular season showdowns, the 2020 All-Star Game, and the NBA Finals in June, featuring the home and away calls for all 30 teams. Plus, with the NBA on demand, relive the best moments of the season by listening to the past games in their entirety. Listen to the NBA all season long on TuneIn.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip
Follow at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Right now, instead of hearing this, you could be listening to the music that keeps you moving with TuneIn Premium. Find today's biggest songs and all of your favorites commercial-free. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
We're listening to Bloomberg Radio. A reminder, Michael Bloomberg, a Democratic presidential candidate, is the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP, parent of Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update. Now the news.
The gun rights rally at the Virginia state capitol in Richmond is underway, peaceful so far during a declared state of emergency that bans weapons. That's due to credible threats coming from several militia and white supremacy groups hinting at plans to disrupt the annual event. Nick Valencia is with the crowd on the perimeter of the Capitol grounds.
The majority of the demonstrators that are here are just beyond the fence. They are outside because that's the area where you can have your weapons. There's people there with long guns, pistols on their hips, people that knew that they weren't going to be allowed into this state grounds but decided to show up anyway because they wanted to show their support for the Second Amendment.
Police say an armed security guard shot and killed a man suspected of shooting a woman to death and injuring 15 more people outside a bar in Kansas City, Missouri last night. Spacewalking astronauts tackled one last round of battery improvements outside the International Space Station today. NASA's Jessica Meyer and Christina Cook floated out to finish the work they began last week. Wall Street's closed on this Martin Luther King holiday.
This is Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Masser and Jason Kelly from Bloomberg Radio.
Every new watch is like a new piece of art.
Italian wines as a whole really speak to that quintessential need.
It is the most powerful car made in the U.S., period.
You get the beautiful interior, the iconic design.
It's very chic and posh.
Even if you pay for it, it's something that money can't get.
The opener pursuits this week, it's about building your own greenhouse. I know, Jason Kelly, you've been thinking about this.
I've been thinking so much about it, but what we debated our house is greenhouse conservatory. Greenhouse conservatory.
What to do?
What to do. James Tarmy is here with us in New York City. Didn't see this one coming, and yet it's a fascinating tale.
Yeah.
So this is how people are spending their money.
It turns out that very wealthy people in the last 10 years or so have started spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars, on their own private greenhouses in an effort to control where their produce comes from.
Is this to grow their own kale? What is it?
Well, possibly, yes. Kale, tomatoes, lettuce, peppers, all the stuff that you would just buy at a normal supermarket, people are very aggressively trying to grow on their own. So you end up getting tomatoes that if you actually amortize the cost of what the actual greenhouse costs and so forth. It costs like $40 a tomato or whatever. So yeah,
but it's your tomato.
But it's your tomato.
And let's be honest, by grow their own, it's usually hire someone to grow their own, right?
Or try to hire someone to. We're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves, of course, but the entire issue that many people have run up against is that the person who they call their gardener who's the person who trims hedges and, transplants things, is not in fact trained in horticulture.
Right. They're trained maybe in landscaping, but not horticulture.
Exactly.
Right, yeah.
And so people are discovering that they build this massive infrastructure and think that they can hire people to actually do what the infrastructure is for, namely grow plants, and end up being in a situation where they literally cannot find anyone to actually enact their plans.
All right, so let's take a few steps back and let's talk about what you found out. I mean, it really is kind of going back to the UK, right? There's lots of greenhouses there.
Yes, one person says that greenhouses in the UK are what garages are to the US, in the sense that everyone has them.
That kind of felt painful.
Yeah.
Not the same.
A bit of a blow, but. Anyone can have a greenhouse technically if it's a kind of little glass shack, but really those are oftentimes called cold frame houses, where it's just sort of to try to protect the plants from the frost.
Right.
And these can be quite cheap. Once you start getting into an actual greenhouse that's meant to nurture and grow and winter plants all year round, you end up having to control temperature fluctuations during the day and night. You have mechanical systems. You have a very, very complex series of different machines and various calculations that you have to take into account when you're constructing this ostensibly kind of bucolic little idyllic structure.
All right, so going back to where we started a little bit, there's a greenhouse and then there's a conservatory. A conservatory seems much more relaxing.
It is relaxing, but it's also not great for actually growing plants. It's great for keeping plants.
Yes.
Right? As many people know, keeping plants in a glassy place during the summer and winter means that the plants, if you water them, thrive. However, it actually is not the best place to grow plants. First of all, because you need a lot of soil, and you need to water them aggressively. But also, plants need very different temperatures oftentimes than what your fern in your living room needs.
Right.
And so, if you're actually taking this seriously and trying to grow lettuce or whatever, you can't really have it attached to your house. You need a standalone space, and you need a lot more serious of an investment, I think.
And maybe plants need a climate control that's not exactly comfortable for human beings.
Right?
So now when it comes to cost, then it starts to get incredibly expensive, especially if you want it to look nice. So, a lot of these companies have a kind of base model that are of around 300 square feet that starts at approximately $50,000. And that cost will double when it comes to the mechanical systems being implemented and everything. So at the base amount, for a lot of these people, they're spending at least $100,000, if not a lot more. And going back to what we were initially discussing, they spend all of this money, and then one person told me that these greenhouses end up being very, very expensive storage sheds after a little while because they really can't find anyone to staff it.
Right. James Tarmy, always great. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
So in Pursuits this week, it's not a supercar, it's not a race car, it's not an exotic concept car, it is a station wagon.
Or as I have learned to call it, a Carol car.
I love station wagons.
Yeah, Hannah Elliott is here. She's telling us about this sleek new Audi that's making station wagons sexy, although apparently to some people they always were.
Yeah, always were. So tell us about the car that you rode.
So this is very exciting in the world of station wagons. This is the Audi RS6 Avant, and it has not been sold in the United States until this year. And it's basically a supercar in station wagon form. So if you love station wagons, this is a very exciting thing. We're finally getting something fast, powerful, cool, even.
I want to hear about the car, but what is it about? Is it that there are a ton more wagons over in Europe versus here?
Europeans have this thing where they respect and honor the tradition of the station wagon. Let's not forget, this is the shooting, they call it a shooting break in Europe.
Right.
And that comes from the tradition of going out on the hunt.
Right.
And you take a shooting break and you open the back of your car and it's a nice picnic. You've got that long roof line. So, of course, the Europeans get it. we're slowly catching on, and the automakers have finally decided to give us what we want.
And so how much of this is about just space, in the sense that, like, Europeans, they have traditionally like a little less space, both in their homes. It's a smaller part of the country. Yeah. Whereas here in the United States, we're like, bigger is better, whether it's a minivan, whether it's an Escalade or a Suburban or whatever. We've gone big and not been as economical, I guess, with the way we design cars. Does that make sense?
Totally. I think the key word here is functionality. Yeah. You get something that is the height of a car and the width of a car, so it's smaller than an SUV, but it has the functionality of an SUV. Right. So it's maybe the thinking person's SUV. It's practical. You can put, the back door, it probably has slightly less space than an SUV, but it's as functional, I would say. So we're talking functionality.
All right, functional, but you sounded like this car from driving it that you liked it. Tell us where you drove it and what the experience was.
Okay, so I took this out in the hills in Malibu, and you may not think this because there's of course the highway in Malibu, but if you take a hard right and you go up in the hills, there are some really aggressive turns up there. So I took this Avant up there, and it performed. I had just gotten out of the Audi R8 and got into this. Now, the R8's their sports car. Right. It kept right up. It has almost 600 horsepower, which is kind of insane. All-wheel drive, all these crazy drive modes. It was a blast, and it sounds incredible.
Well, talk to us a little bit about the growl of the car. You actually have a line in the story.
Yeah, this is the R-rated line, yes. It does. It sounds like a sports car, and this engine note was made specially for the American market because Audi knows Americans, again, might be a little hesitant about the station wagon thing. So they made a unique engine note specifically for the American market. It does sound really aggressive.
And so where does this fit sort of in the price range? I mean, Audi obviously is higher end, but Mercedes, I think, also has a pretty popular station wagon as well, right?
Mercedes does make great station wagons. It makes even AMG station wagons, which are, mid-six, or, in the six figures. Audi tells me that this is going to be roughly $120,000. They haven't come out with official pricing yet. So it's very expensive. Audi does make other less expensive wagons that are around $50,000. So it's a big jump. But if you think, okay, Porsche makes a Panamera Sport Turismo, which is kind of like a wagon too. Right. Again, these are all in the six figures now. These are primo cars.
Right.
So, all right. So you liked how it drove. Yeah. Tell us about the interiors, the exteriors in terms of what it looked like.
So my favorite thing about the technology on this car is in the back, it has a motion sensor that if you swipe your foot underneath the back, it opens the back hatch, which I think is so cool.
I have to tell you, my car has that. My whole family made fun of me. I knew you were going to go there. But when your hands are full, you just swipe your foot.
Completely. It's a great thing. To your point about the interiors, it comes with two special interiors, the RS spec interiors. You've got this honeycomb pattern on the seats. It's basically trimmed like a sports car with perforated leather. The whole interior is gorgeous in the Audi tradition.
And so what does this tell us about where the market may go from here?
It's very interesting. I don't know. The answer is I don't know. I feel like it's a bit of a trial thing. We've seen SUVs continue to dominate. There's no sign of that changing or slowing down. But this is an interesting option, and it is telling that they are bringing it to market now. It's telling that it's not a hybrid. It's a full-on V8 car. So we'll see.
And fuel efficiency, do you get any more efficiency here for a big gas-guzzling SUV?
Yes, I will say this is not the most efficient station wagon in the world, but I mean, if you drive this on long stretches, you can maybe get 20 miles per gallon or so. So it's
a little better.
Yeah.
Are you anticipating other folks? Is there anybody else to bring in a wagon?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't think so. Yeah. Again, this is a really niche.
Yeah.
Audience. We'll see. It's kind of new and exciting and hasn't really been done like this before. So we'll see. I'm excited to find out.
Christmas 2020, there could be a bow on this car outside of the Masser house.
Gotta love my wagon, though. Gotta tell you.
Right, Hannah Elliott, thanks a lot.
Thank you, guys.
That's Hannah Elliott. Love her job. Love that she brought us a station wagon this week.
Well, you especially, because
I love my wagon.
Dirty little secret that came out of the taping of the show this week. You're a station wagonista.
I just got to tell all of our listeners, Jason's now looking at me very differently. Like, really? A wagon?
Well, to be fair, I have a minivan.
Okay, yeah, exactly. All right, it's all perspective.
And that wraps up the weekend edition of Bloomberg Business Week from Bloomberg Radio. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Jason Kelly.
And I'm Carol Masser, proud of my station wagon. Be sure to tune into Bloomberg Business Week Radio live Monday through Friday. All starts at 2 p.m. Wall Street time.
And if you can't catch us live, get our daily podcast wherever you download your podcast.
You can also watch the show live on YouTube. Just search for Bloomberg Global News.
And get this week's edition of the magazine. It's on newsstands now.
We'll be back next week at the same time.
This is Bloomberg.
Boredom, fitness enemy number one. So don't just run. Run, run, mix it up, skip, run, skip, run. Give yourself a lift, mix it up, lift, mix it up, run, lift, splash, skip, lift, run. It's crunch time, skip, mix it up, run, mix it, add a boxing class, skip, run, splash, skip, run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run, mix it up, skip, mix it, run. Mix it.
This is not a cat. This is not a rocket. And this is not a sale. That's right. At Smarty Mobile, we're not having a sale. While others are slashing prices, we're introducing our best ever new plans. Take our new 30-gig data SIM for just £10 a month. With unlimited calls and texts and no speed restrictions, credit checks or contract tying you down, why shop around? New plans, great value. Now that's Smarty. Grab yours today. Search Smarty Mobile. See smarty.co.uk for terms.
Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded. Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Having to deal with financial stuff can make you feel... But at Money Supermarket, we make you feel... That's because we go further to help you get money car. We don't just compare. We cut prices to help you get better car insurance deals. Get money car. Money Supermarket.
The puck drops. 12 players face off to win. The suspense is pure torture, but you wouldn't miss this for the world. TuneIn brings you every minute of the NHL season. Listen live to hockey when it matters most on TuneIn.
Today at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now a global news update.
Peaceful rally sharing the loss. I'm Michael Toscano. A gun rights rally in Virginia state capitol kicked off this morning amid heavy security and a ban on weapons on state capitol grounds as police cite credible threats from militia and white supremacy groups about disrupting the annual event. Nick Valencia is with the crowd.
So far, the crowd is very peaceful. They've chanted USA a couple of times. They've chanted some, negative chants towards the Democratic governor here, Ralph Northam. But by and large, they've been very, very peaceful.
Honolulu mourning the loss of 2 police officers shot to death, as Jim Roop reports.
Honolulu Police Chief Susan Ballard emotional at a news conference announcing the deaths of officers Tiffany Enriquez and Kaoliki Kalama, offering condolences to their families.
The HPD Ohana grieves along with you and shares your loss.
The suspect, a man in his 60s identified as Jerry Hannell with a history of restraining orders, allegedly stabbed his landlord after she tried to evict him on Sunday. When officers arrived, he opened fire, killing Enriquez, who'd been an HPD officer for 7 years, and Kalama, a 9-year veteran. It's believed Hannell set fire to the home, which spread then to several other homes, destroying 7 of them. While the investigation continues, it's also believed Hannell's body is inside one of the homes. I'm Jim Roop.
The Chinese government says human-to-human transmission has been confirmed in the outbreak of that new coronavirus. Medical personnel are infected, and cases are now showing up in Beijing during the busiest travel period in China for the Lunar New Year. President Trump's lawyers face a noon Eastern Time 1 deadline to submit their written impeachment defense, as we hear from Caitlin Collins at the White House.
So far, we're not expecting any surprises in this. It's basically going to look like that document we got on Saturday from the White House. There's about 7 pages, essentially making their argument that they believe this is, of course, a flawed process. They do not think that these articles of impeachment are constitutional.
Wall Street stock markets closed for the Martin Luther King holiday. I'm Michael Toscano.
When I adopted her, she was a mess. Scabs, itching, licking, missing fur, hot spots. So I get the Dinovite. DINOVITE.com. And the Lico Chops. Within a 4-week total, Sheba is 105 lean pounds of shiny, smooth, happy dog. And she loves it.
You won't believe how happy your dog will be.
Dinovite for life. DINOVITE.com.
Finding great candidates to hire can be like, well, trying to find a needle in a haystack, but not with ZipRecruiter. Its powerful technology actively finds and invites qualified candidates to apply to your job. So while other companies might deliver a lot of hay, ZipRecruiter finds you the needle in the haystack.
See why 4 out of 5 employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate within the first day. Try ZipRecruiter for free at ZipRecruiter.com/search. That's ZipRecruiter.com/search.
Kansas City police are investigating a deadly shooting at a local club last night, and Clayton Neville reports an armed security guard saved lives.
Hours after the Kansas City Chiefs advanced to the Super Bowl, shots rang out at 9 Ultra Lounge. Police say 2 people were killed and 15 hurt. Captain David Jackson with Kansas City PD says a security guard returned fire.
Preliminary investigation looks as though an armed security guard working at the establishment stopped the shooter.
The shooter believed to be among the 2 dead.
Winter has much of the eastern part of the nation in the freezer, but meteorologist Chad Myers tells us relief is coming.
Today technically should be the coldest day of the year. As we bottom out, the sun gets a little bit higher in the sky, we begin to warm up. So only 2 or 3 days worth of cold air. Temperatures will be warming up nicely.
The Pacific Northwest, however, still cleaning up from the last storms, has another on the way. I'm Michael Toscano.
And I'm Mark Mills in the Bloomberg Radio Newsroom. The International Monetary Fund predicted the world economy will strengthen in 2020. The IMF said global growth will accelerate to 3.3% this year from 2.9% in 2019, marking the first pickup in 3 years. Both figures are down compared with forecasts the IMF made in October, although the report contained some modest hope, noting that risks are less skewed toward negative outcomes this year. With U.S. financial markets closed for the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday, European stocks are mostly lower. Asian shares closed mixed, and S&P 500 stock index futures are down by a fraction as investors look ahead to a fresh batch of corporate earnings and some key central bank meetings this week. We'll check the latest numbers in a moment. BBB-rated bonds, the lowest quality bonds in the investment grade category, had a great year in 2019 with a total return of 16%. But money managers at KKR and Guggenheim Partners say the BBB party may be coming to an end, as we hear from Bloomberg's Greg Jarrett.
With economic growth relatively stagnant in major global economies and heightened risk of disappointing earnings and greater regulation in areas like technology, a wave of investment-grade companies could be cut to junk over the next 12 to 18 months, this according to KKR. Firm recommends cutting exposure to corporate notes rated in the BBB tier, the bottom of the investments-grade scale. Greg Jarrett, Bloomberg Radio.
Libya's eastern strongman kept virtually all of the nation's oil fields shut in a show of defiance after world leaders failed to persuade him to sign a peace deal ending the OPEC country's civil war. Brent crude up 0.4%. In late afternoon trading, London's FTSE index is down 0.3%. The DAX in Germany up 0.1%. Japan's Nikkei closed up 0.2%. The Hang Seng in Hong Kong finished down 0.9%. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Mark Mills. This is Bloomberg.
Thank you so much for joining us for this holiday edition of Bloomberg Daybreak. The stock market is closed on this Martin Luther King Day. I'm Nathan Hager. Over the next hour, we will talk about whether 2 of the hottest stocks around can keep it up in 2020. We look at the future of Apple and Tesla with Gene Munster, co-founder of Loop Ventures. But first, we are coming off a week which saw a slew of bank earnings, and to help us look at what's in store for financials this year, we're pleased to welcome Allison Williams. senior financial services analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence. Wow, what a week for Wall Street banks, Allison. They just put on a tear in the fourth quarter.
Yes, we started off with a bang. JP Morgan coming out with extremely strong fixed income trading numbers, well above estimates. Yes, that compares to a week year ago, but the quarter also very strong. And then we sort of saw that echoed across the board. And then we ended the week with Morgan Stanley, who raised their profitability targets above consensus estimates and also implying some upside from their 2019 results, which met their former target.
Was this a big surprise, particularly in fixed income, for just about all of the banks to outperform as much as they did?
It is a surprise, the degree of outperformance. Expectations were for big gains, again, just compared to a week year ago. And then we did see pockets of strength in the quarter, but the banks really citing broad strength and really significant upside to the numbers. Some of the areas that were called out, U.S. rates with some of the Fed activity in the domestic market was helpful. So that's not necessarily a read-through to some of the European banks, which kick off tomorrow with UBS. But credit trading and securitization strength was also an area cited by Morgan Stanley and some others, and that is an area where banks, especially Credit Suisse, may see some benefit.
Are the banks expecting the Fed to remain accommodative in a way that allows them to continue the kind of growth that they've seen in the fixed income space?
Across the banks, there are a couple that noted that they expect the Fed to potentially cut one more time. Some of what's been happening with repo facilities remains a bit of a question. I think the biggest upside to fixed income trading can come for the banks if we get a little bit more volatility. So we have volatility across a number of measures at very low levels, and that tends to happen when you have monetary policy convergence to lower rates, as we sort of learned last decade. And so that tends to hamper client activity, client opportunity. So if we did get some kind of unexpected surprise, that could be helpful to fixed income. It should be noted that even though we had sort of these big gains this quarter, we're still ending the decade on sort of a low note for the markets overall. Equity trading was a little bit more mixed across the companies. We saw strength in cash and prime. That's a business where Morgan Stanley, JP Morgan, and Goldman are all very strong. Morgan Stanley was flat overall in equities for the quarter, whereas the other two gained. And that's because we're seeing weakness in the equity derivatives business. And so that has provided some offset, and we saw declines at Bank of America and Citi really based on that.
When you have that kind of offset, how do the financials navigate that balance between equities trading and the fixed income space, particularly some of the more diversified banks on Wall Street?
For all the banks that we just spoke of, they do have diversified franchises, so perhaps differences across the banks, but they all do have a presence in the businesses, and that obviously can be helpful. For example, in 2018, in the first half, we saw really strong equities. In the fourth quarter of 2018, as I noted, we saw very weak FICC. And then this quarter, strong FICC, weaker equities. But obviously having a diversified mix is helpful. The other place where we saw mixed results was in banking fees, debt underwriting performing well, equity underwriting also doing better, M&A fees down versus a very strong quarter last year, but with the announced volumes, we do expect that that's going to carry through to some strength in early 2020.
Do you think cost cutting is going to continue to be part of the story? I mean, we saw those pretty eye-popping numbers, particularly from Morgan Stanley on that front.
Cost cutting really is the story for as long as there is sort of the amount of revenue uncertainty that we've spoken about. So in the fourth quarter, what the banks benefited really from was a turn in client sentiment and sort of risk on. However, because geopolitics remains fluid, trade remains, and Brexit and other issues are still out there, there is the potential to see some disruption in markets. And I think the other point for the U.S. banks is that we are late in the cycle. And for banks globally, We spoke about low rates. We have negative rates in several countries. And so to the extent that we have this environment, costs really make a difference. And again, this was a story across the banks. Wells Fargo is a company where there's very little visibility on very elevated costs. And obviously there are some unique issues there, but I would put them at one end of the spectrum. Whereas Citigroup coming out and really committing to costs, feeling that they can get operating leverage with some revenue growth. Bank of America, which has been getting operating leverage, but talked about their net interest income being challenged a little bit in the first half. And while expenses are going to be higher in the first quarter, there's some seasonal issues there. But just sort of those two factors put together, putting a little bit of pressure in the very near term, and investors really focused on that.
Allison Williams, Senior Financial Services Analyst for Bloomberg Intelligence. Thanks for this. We appreciate you joining us. Up next on this holiday edition of Bloomberg Daybreak, we talk Apple and Tesla with one of the preeminent analysts around, Gene Munster of Loop Ventures. It is 13 minutes past the hour. I'm Nathan Hager, and this is Bloomberg.
Vattel Shah is Senior Project Engineer at Mott MacDonald, a global engineering consultancy with more than 16,000 employees. He earned his PhD at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and as an adjunct professor is helping NJIT students explore emerging technologies.
My focus is renewable markets, emerging technologies, the idea of floating cities. What are we doing to develop that? What will happen to the city on the water? Well, you're going to have waves hitting it. You're going to have solar. How are you going to develop plants? How are you going to develop vegetation and farming? That sort of thought process happens at NJIT. We actually plan out what will the city look like. How do we develop that so in 10 years we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water? NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials, so taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. The incredible shrinking retail footprint is walking right into 2020.
We saw 9,400 stores close this year. That was a record.
Retail Metrics' Ken Perkins on the 2019 total. Credit Suisse thinks 2020 could be even worse, and not just with companies like Pier 1 planning to close about half its stores and Macy's shutting about 30 more. Teen retailer Abercrombie & Fitch says it's ready to walk right out of any mall. Perkins says that could be the right decision.
So many of these retailers have large-sized stores with tons of apparel that just isn't selling.
Smaller format stores could work.
We've seen some real strong success with Target going into particularly college areas and urban areas.
But that might not be as easy or as cost-saving as it sounds.
It requires an investment in logistics, which a lot of retailers might not be able to do.
Malls are finding other uses for that empty space. Doctors' offices, co-working spaces. One mall in Pennsylvania will put a mini casino where a department store used to be. Joan Doniger, Bloomberg Radio.
Rich. Boredom, fitness enemy number one. So don't just run. Run, run, mix it up, skip, run, skip, run. Give yourself a lift, mix it up, lift, mix it up, run, lift, splash, skip, lift, run. It's crunch time, skip, mix it up, run, mix it out of boxing class. Skip, run, splash, skip, run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run. Mix it up. Mix it. Run. Mix it.
This is not a cat. This is not a rocket. And this is not a sale. That's right. At Smarty Mobile, we're not having a sale. While others are slashing prices, we're introducing our best ever new plans. Take our new 30-gig data SIM for just £10 a month. With unlimited calls and texts and no speed restrictions, credit checks or contract tying you down, why shop around? New plans, great value. Now that's Smarty. Grab yours today. Search Smarty Mobile. See smarty.co.uk for terms.
Hello, I'm your captain for today's Virgin Atlantic flight. Please drop everything and pay close attention to the following announcement. The sale is now on. Our crew are ready to take your bags and stresses away. The cocktails are ready to serve, the movies are loaded, and we're all set for takeoff to the Caribbean. So, take your seat in our award-winning economy class. We're ready to go when you are.
The Virgin Atlantic sale. Fly amazing for less. For more details, visit virginatlantic.com.
You might already know that TuneIn allows you to listen to all the pro sports leagues wherever you go. But did you know TuneIn is also home to the wide world of college sports?
Open three, DeAndre Hunter got it! Handoff Carruthers, big hole right side. He leaps and he surges in. Touchdown!
From live college football, basketball, and baseball games to podcasts and coaches shows fueling your love for the game in your school. And the best part is, it's all free. Search college sports to find your team or league.
Welcome back to this special Martin Luther King edition of Bloomberg Daybreak. Markets are closed for the holiday. I'm Nathan Hager. We now turn our focus to two stocks that have been on a tear, Apple and Tesla. We begin with the electric car maker. Tesla CEO Elon Musk was quite literally dancing on the stage when he opened his company's new gigafactory in Shanghai.
We could not have achieved this goal without the support from all levels of government in China, especially the Shanghai local government.
And investors seem to be sharing Musk's enthusiasm, driving the stock above $500 a share for the first time just last week, and only seeming to go higher from there. For more, we're pleased to be joined by the co-founder of Loop Ventures, Gene Munster. Always good talking tech with you, Gene. And it's funny to think that just, 7 months ago, Tesla was at a low of $177 a share. But you've been bullish on this company for some time. Are you still?
Nathan, we are. And ultimately, we view Tesla as playing into two undeniable truths. One around the future of cars are going to be electric, and they're the market share leader by a wide margin. And second is the future of automotive and vehicles will be autonomous. And there is a debate whether and how much they'll play into that. But the big reason why we are still optimistic about the story is that they play into those two levels. The market cap now is reaching $100 billion. So one of the key questions we have is this move justified? Can this be a much bigger company? I think that there is a reasonable case that this could be a much bigger company.
You mentioned two factors why you think Tesla's future is still bright, one of them being the share of the electric vehicle market. Can Tesla continue to maintain its dominance in this space when you have Ford, GM, and Volkswagen making aggressive moves toward EV?
I think it's unlikely that they can maintain the same share, but I think that they can have an outsized market share for the automotive industry. So to put some perspective around that, in the U.S., Tesla has about 70% of the electric car market. Last year, in 2019, it was about 3% of total cars sold in the U.S. Globally, their EV market share is much lower because about 70% of EVs come from China, and those are very low-cost EVs. But the concept of Tesla 10 years from now having call it 15% or better market share globally is a very real possibility, which would kind of put it on par with the biggest car companies' market shares today with GM and Toyota. And so to answer your questions, we think that their market share will decline, undoubtedly, but still be more higher market share than we have seen with typical automotive companies. And the reason why, there's a structural reason why that they can maintain this high market share is that making electric cars is different than making traditional internal combustion engines, vehicles powered by that. And the fundamentals around battery construction and the technology that goes into it, this is more like a computer on wheels. And so there is some scale advantages that Tesla has built over the last 10 years that make it difficult for traditional automotive companies to build electric cars in a cost-effective way. And that ultimately means that traditional automotive companies, if they want to gain market share, they are going to have to sell more electric vehicles at a subsidized rate. And these businesses, traditional automotive, tend to be lower margin businesses. And so it puts them in a tight spot. And ultimately, we think that financial consideration, those financial difficulties of traditional automotive, will pave the way for Tesla to have an outsized market share in the EV market a decade from now.
All this leads to the fundamental question whether it can actually meet its numbers. What is your outlook for whether Tesla will be able to maintain a steady supply of vehicles?
So we're comfortable with them exceeding the street expectations of 463,000 cars in 2020. Now, put that in perspective, there's 90 million cars sold globally, cars and light trucks sold globally. So 463, that will be up about 30% from 2019. And part of the reason why is what's happening with China and their gigafactory. So they basically started construction on that a year ago. They're delivering cars from that. They are producing cars at a pace of 3,000 per week. Most analysts think that for 2020, Tesla will deliver somewhere between 40 and 100,000 vehicles from that China factory. But if you assume that they can continue the current pace of production at 3,000 per week, and that there is demand to fill that, which is a debatable question, that would be 150,000 vehicles, well above the high end of the expectation. So there is this powerful tailwind. That's the big opportunity. Now, people who are less optimistic about the Tesla story will point to in 2020, there is going to be elimination of the U.S. EV tax credit, which was about $1,900 most recently. And so they would say that that's a headwind and that these numbers are actually in jeopardy. We're in the camp that they will exceed that number based on what's going on in China.
You mentioned Tesla aiming toward a $100 billion valuation. As we've said, the stock itself has been on a tear. What's to say that Tesla doesn't crash just as hard as it's shot up, given the volatility we've seen in this stock over the last several years?
You should plan that there's going to be some sort of pullback. It could be a dramatic pullback. I'm a firm believer that this company is going to be successful, but I also believe what's happened with shares is best defined most recently, the last 6 months, is euphoric. Typically, when you have that, you can have some major pullbacks. That could be 10, 20% type of pullbacks. So investors should structurally prepare for those type of pullbacks. But for the long-term investor who is thinking about those undeniable truths that we had talked about earlier, you can build a case that that this company could have 15% of the global market share. And if you assume a $40,000 per vehicle with that 15% share, you can build a case that they will have $350 billion per year in revenue in the next decade. And that company that has $350 billion in revenue, that is a combination of hardware, software, and services, which is what Tesla is, very similar to Apple. You should drive a market cap higher than, call it $100 billion a day. So right now, Apple, that same combination, hardware, software, and services, much better company, but just structurally has some similarities there. That trades at 4 times that revenue multiple. So you can see how an investor, despite the risk of a big pullback, can still feel there's some comfort and confidence that this could be a much bigger company.
Gene Munster, Loop Ventures co-founder, stay with us. I want to continue this conversation on Apple as well as some of your other tech predictions for this year. That's straight ahead on this Martin Luther King Day edition of Bloomberg Daybreak. It is 25 minutes past the hour. I'm Nathan Hager, and this is Bloomberg.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know, with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset Management. I'm Steve Meyer, President, Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Boredom, fitness enemy number one. So don't just run. Run, run, mix it up, skip, run, skip, run. Give yourself a lift, mix it up, lift, mix it up, run, lift, splash, skip, lift, run. It's crunch time. Skip, mix it up, run, mix it out of boxing class. Skip, run, splash, skip, run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run, mix it up, skip, mix it, run. Mix it.
This is not a cat. This is not a rocket. And this is not a sale. That's right. At Smarty Mobile, we're not having a sale. While others are slashing prices, we're introducing our best ever new plans. Take our new 30 gig data SIM for just £10 a month. With unlimited calls and texts and no speed restrictions, credit checks or contract tying you down, why shop around? New plans, great value. Now that's Smarty. Grab yours today. Search Smarty Mobile. See smarty.co.uk for terms.
I used to be a bit of a rubbish sleeper. I'd toss and turn all night. And somehow I could never find the comfy bit of the mattress. It was a proper nightmare. That's what brought me here. Testing mattresses in the Which Test Lab. We use a custom-made barrel rolling machine to simulate a decade's worth of use. And the mattresses that perform best are the only ones we recommend for your bedroom.
Which tests harder so you can buy smarter. Visit which.co.uk.
Hello, I'm your captain for today's Virgin Atlantic flight. Please drop everything and pay close attention to the following announcement. The sale is now on. Our crew are ready to take your bags and stresses away. The cocktails are ready to serve, the movies are loaded, and we're all set for takeoff to the Caribbean. So, take your seat in our award-winning economy class. We're ready to go when you are.
The Virgin Atlantic sale. Fly amazing for less. For more details, visit virginatlantic.com.
Pascal gobbles up the rebound and slammed it down.
Catch your favorite NBA team right here on TuneIn.
A step back deep three is up and in.
Search NBA on TuneIn and hear all the action. The NBA lives on TuneIn.
Right now, instead of hearing this, you could be listening to the music that keeps you moving with TuneIn Premium. Find today's biggest songs and all of your favorites commercial-free. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
The White House is expected to submit a legal brief for opening arguments soon. The impeachment trial is set to move to opening arguments tomorrow. The White House trial brief will be the blueprint for the defense opening arguments. Heavy security is in place around the Virginia Capitol in Richmond. Thousands are on hand for a gun rights rally that authorities fear could result in the same kind of violence that turned a rally in Charlottesville deadly. Correspondent Nick Valencia is on the scene.
So far, the crowd is very peaceful. They've chanted USA a couple of times. They've chanted some, negative chants towards the Democratic governor here, Ralph Northam. But by and large, they've been very, very peaceful.
A gunman opened fire on people waiting in line to get into a Kansas City bar last night and was, police believe, shot and killed along with a woman with him by an armed security guard. At least 15 were taken to the hospital, 3 in critical condition. I'm Mike Moss.
And I'm Mark Mills in the Bloomberg Radio Newsroom. The International Monetary Fund predicted the world economy will strengthen in 2020, though at a slightly slower pace than previously anticipated. The IMF said global growth will accelerate to a 3.3% rate from 2.9% last year, marking the first pickup in 3 years. Geeta Gopinath, chief economist at the International Monetary Fund, said one reason for better growth this year is the initial trade deal between the U.S. and China, but she added a note of caution.
We welcome this news, but we also press for more on this front. I mean, there has to be a more comprehensive deal. It has to be durable and long-lasting. Now, if these tensions return, that again will then undo all of the improvement in policy uncertainty that we've seen recently.
Gopinath spoke with Bloomberg Television at the World Economic Forum's annual meeting in Davos, Switzerland. U.S. financial markets are observing the Martin Luther King holiday today. International exchanges are open. Europe is just about wrapping up Monday trading. The London FTSE is off 1/3%. The DAX in Germany up about 0.1%. The Nikkei in Japan closed up 0.2%. The Hang Seng in Hong Kong was off 0.9%. Ford, LG, and Pernod Ricard are now among the top global companies best prepared for the effects of climate change. More on that from Bloomberg's Denise Pellegrini.
The nonprofit CDP gives the 3 companies an A grade for how aggressive they are in setting carbon goals and also how forthcoming they are about those efforts. Only 2% of the 8,400 companies CDP looked at got that grade. Alphabet, Walmart, and Citigroup among them. At 38, Japan had the most companies on the A list, followed by 35 in the United States. Denise Pellegrini, Bloomberg Radio.
Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Mark Mills. This is Bloomberg.
We're so glad you joined us for this holiday edition of Bloomberg Daybreak. U.S. markets are closed for Martin Luther King Day. I'm Nathan Hager, and we continue our conversation now with Gene Munster, co-founder of Loop Ventures. We talked about Tesla earlier, Gene. Let's move on to Apple. And you, of course, were one of the very first analysts to be a bull on Apple, talking more than 15 years ago, and the stock has been the best performing in the Dow Jones Industrial Average, last year surging more than 86%. Can Apple maintain that?
On a percentage basis, it's highly unlikely, but in terms of if you look at the other FANG names, I think Apple will outperform those. $350 would be a base case for this year, and $450 is a realistic case for sometime next year. The groundwork for Apple over the next 3 to 4 years is surprisingly a greenfield. There's some tailwinds that historically the company has kind of this boom and bust evolution around their product cycles. But what we're going into over the next few years, specifically around 5G, I think sets the framework that this could be a continued move higher in Apple shares. So despite the move recently, we're still very optimistic about the story.
There has been a lot of talk about 5G, of course. What's got you thinking Apple is better positioned than its competitors on the next generation of mobile?
I would say Apple is probably the best investment play around 5G, in part because just over half their revenue is iPhone, which there's the natural upgrade cycle. And separately is there's other pieces of their business, whether it's wearables or services, that also are positively impacted by 5G. It may be worth pausing and just putting some definitions around 5G. It's faster data to your smartphone, which is typically it's going to be somewhere between 5 and 10 times faster than your current phone, which is nice for starting videos, but that's not the real opportunity around 5G. At its core, it will allow mobile phones to tap into cloud-scale computing. So your phone can use processing in the cloud, and you won't even know that it's being done in the cloud. That's how fast the connection speeds are, which opens up significant new avenues in terms of what you can use your phone for. Artificial intelligence that's built into different applications, augmented reality, the future of autonomy and transportation plays into that. But Apple ultimately has a play which will be a juicy opportunity for investors or for consumers for their tech experience to improve. And so, but this is going to take a few years for this really to roll out. So I think that is the opportunity around Apple stock, is that whenever you have these multiple year opportunities, it gets investors more optimistic.
You know, with the focus on 5G, it puts a lot of attention back on the products that Apple has become so famous for putting out, the iPhones, the AirPods you mentioned, Apple Watch. It was only a few months ago we were talking about Apple needing to make a pivot toward services. Is the company striking the balance now?
Feels like it. And, you've had the iPhone as a percentage of revenue was almost 70% a few years ago. Now it's going to be 53%. And the reason in 2020, the reason why is that services and wearables have been growing quickly, call it close to 20 and 30% respectively over the last few years. And so I think that they are striking that balance of really bringing together what is kind of a comprehensive consumer tech experience. So the only company that can do that. Typically when you buy tech, whether it's some sort of a wearable, your phone, the services, you kind of have to piece it together. I think that the balance that Apple has struck and where they're really resonating is everything just works together nicely. And for consumers who don't want the headache of trying to manage these different experiences, Apple makes it easy for them. And I think that's going to be one of their fundamental winning strategies.
I want to get to some of your other tech predictions. What's standing out for you in the tech space?
One is that if you think about what Amazon is doing this year, they are going to continue their push into traditional brick and mortar. We think that this year they'll add 50 additional brick and mortar stores. Ultimately, that is a sign that they keep expanding their business beyond just online. And second is an area that I've been wrong on, which is what's going to happen with Netflix. And the prediction is actually that it's positive for Netflix. I've been relatively negative on the name because the greater competition from Disney and Apple and the streaming services. But I think that they'll actually meet their expectations for net sub ads in 2020 of, call it, 26 million globally. Ultimately, Apple streaming and Disney through the promotions are basically free today. And so I don't think consumers really need to make any decisions whether to keep Netflix or not. 2021 may be a different conversation when people actually have to start making some decisions about which services they keep. But Netflix making their paid net sub ads is another important prediction we have for 2020.
It never hurts to stay nimble as we look ahead to the future. Our thanks to Gene Munster, co-founder of Loop Ventures, for joining us on this holiday edition of Bloomberg Daybreak. Still ahead, we look at what's ahead for the Fed and the economy in 2020. It's 39 minutes past the hour. I'm Nathan Hager, and this is Bloomberg.
Hey y'all, Jeff Foxworthy here. Now, if you've ever found yourself repeating the same thing over and over for 75 years, you might be Smokey Bear.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
That's why I'm filling in for Smokey to switch things up, because there's a lot more to say. And I should know because my grandfather was a firefighter. And one of the things he taught me is that the people that love the outdoors the most are often the ones accidentally starting wildfires, which means always BYOB. No, bring your own bucket to the campfire. And be extra careful with things like burning yard trimmings. Don't just walk away, or chances are you might be starting a wildfire. So for the love of the outdoors, go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us number 1 in client support, number 1 in firm leadership, number 1 in operational support, number 1 in compensation, number 1 in professional development support, and number 1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA SIPC, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
This is not a cat. This is not a rocket. And this is not a sale. That's right. At Smarty Mobile, we're not having a sale. While others are slashing prices, we're introducing our best ever new plans. Take our new 30-gig data SIM for just £10 a month. With unlimited calls and texts and no speed restrictions, credit checks or contract tying you down, why shop around? New plans, great value. Now that's Smarty. Grab yours today. Search Smarty Mobile. See smarty.co.uk for terms.
Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded. Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Chilly January days in London are tough enough without a broken boiler. Keep your home warm and working this winter with 2 years interest-free credit and your boiler installed by one of our expert engineers. Plus, you'll get a 5-year British Gas warranty. And we can even quote by video call after work or on weekends. Get a quote by the 29th of February and you can also get £200 off a new boiler or £400 off for our existing home care customers. Search British Gas New Boiler. Conditions apply.
Right now, instead of hearing this, you could be listening to the music that keeps you moving with TuneIn Premium. Find today's biggest songs and all of your favorites commercial-free. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
When you're not listening to your team, take it to the end zone, the rim, or the net. Keep up with the biggest moments in sports by following TuneIn on social media.
Block, Cook into the end zone for the touchdown.
From reminders of the live top games to tips of the best sports stations and podcasts.
Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from Los Angeles. I'm Jenny Taft here with Skip
Follow
Bayless.
at TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to get the most out of TuneIn.
Ready for this. Scores! On the goal line, Marshawn scores!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
And tucks it home!
And with this team, it's really fun to be a part of a team like that.
You can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium from regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards at the goal line. It's intercepted.
Listen live as the action unfolds or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown.
Search NFL today.
Pascal gobbles up the rebound and slams it down.
Get your favorite NBA team right here on TuneIn.
A step back, deep three is up and in.
Search NBA on TuneIn and hear all the action. The NBA lives on TuneIn.
Are you curious what others are listening to on TuneIn? Head to the trending section under Browse to see the most popular stations and podcasts among TuneIn listeners right now. Check it out. You might just discover something new for yourself.
Bloomberg Radio. A reminder, Michael Bloomberg, a Democratic presidential candidate, is the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP, parent of Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update. Now the news.
The White House is expected to submit a legal brief for opening arguments soon. The impeachment trial is set to move to opening arguments tomorrow. The White House trial brief will be the blueprint for the defense opening arguments. Heavy security is in place around the Virginia Capitol in Richmond. Thousands are on hand for a gun rights rally that authorities fear could result in the same kind of violence that turned a rally in Charlottesville deadly. Correspondent Nick Valencia is on the scene.
So far, the crowd is very peaceful. They've chanted USA a couple of times. They've chanted some, negative chants towards the Democratic governor here, Ralph Northam. But by and large, they've been very, very peaceful.
A gunman opened fire on people waiting in line to get into a Kansas City bar last night and was, police believe, shot and killed, along with a woman with him, by an armed security guard. At least 15 were taken to the hospital, 3 in critical condition. I'm Mike Moss.
Welcome back to this special Martin Luther King edition of Bloomberg Daybreak. I'm Nathan Hager. We're going to wrap up the hour now with a look at the economy and what may be in store for the Federal Reserve in 2020. Joining us to help us do that, Yelena Shulyetcheva, senior U.S. economist for Bloomberg Economics, along with Andrew Husby, an economist covering the U.S. and Canada for Bloomberg Economics. Nice to have you both with us. So let's take a look at what we know so far in these first couple of weeks of 2020. We've had a weaker than expected December jobs report. We got a phase 1 trade deal signed with China. Yelena, I'll start with you. How does this set us up for the outlook for 2020?
Well, that actually tells us that 2020 will probably be in line with our expectations for more modest growth than we saw back in 2019. So this would be in line with decelerating growth in personal income growth and personal spending, but consumers will continue to be the key engine of economic growth.
And Andrew, in terms of the consumer, we got retail sales figures that came in pretty good as well. Is that your view as well, that we're on a slower but still growing path?
Sure. Well, it's certainly an upbeat report for that month, but it's in comparison to a pretty weak set of results the year prior. So some of the strength that you'll see touted in various, whether it's in individual companies or in the month itself, it's in comparison to a very weak base. So I think we'd be more focused on the general trend in consumer income, which has been moderating. We kind of sidestepped into the end of the year. And basically the key will be to see whether that momentum shows signs of picking up, whether it's based on labor income or sentiment in the first part of the year.
When you talk about moderating wage growth, Yelena, the big question that's been surrounding this economy for some time is, where's inflation? How do you see inflation moving forward into 2020?
I don't see much inflation moving forward, and I think it will continue to move sideways, but certainly we are not talking about significant acceleration in inflationary pressures. So one of the big culprits behind it is deceleration, or should we even say declines in prices for goods because of the strength in the currency. So strong dollar is significantly weighing on inflation in the goods sector. Meanwhile, services prices are not really accelerating to such a degree that should be reflecting the tight labor market that we have seen as of late. I think 2020 will see some further modest acceleration in wage pressures, but that will not necessarily result in something that will probably spook the Fed and make them hike rates. That is certainly not on the radar.
Yeah, we've talked to a number of analysts who say that the bar for the Fed to raise rates is pretty high now. What do you see potentially changing the Fed's view if we get to that material reassessment of the outlook that the central bank has talked about? I'll put that question to you, Andrew.
Yeah, I think basically the momentum in the Fed policy view is going to be tough to shake this year. The bar to a hike, I think regardless of, you don't want to say regardless of what we see, but even if we see a pickup in, say, wage growth, if we see a pickup in investment, these are things the Fed has been looking for some time, and we'll actually be expecting some of that because of the declines in rate cuts that they've instituted so far last year. So I think they do expect some strength. The baseline view of the Fed is pretty strong, 2% growth, and they won't view this as something they'll need to tamp down again. So the bar to a hike is very high this year. Bar to a cut is actually probably a bit lower. We'll see how the inflation numbers come out.
Before they even consider any move in policy, they will be very, very cautious about that, because the bar in an election year for the Fed, for the central bank, is very, very high for them to act. If you look at the history of central bank actions during election years, you will see that they don't usually change the direction, the course of policy. They might still make adjustments. So, for example, if they were tightening policy, they will continue tightening policy, or if they were on a pause, they will continue to do nothing in terms of rate increases or declines. But the bottom line here is that they will be very, very cautious in an election year to change the course of policy going forward.
Does that take data dependence off the table then when you have an election year factoring in, Andrew?
It's certainly not something they'll ever admit to saying is off the table. You saw a little of this out of the Dallas Fed's Kaplan last week. He did say that he'd like to think that if it got to the point where policy need to be adjusted to the upside, he would consider it. But you could tell there will be quite a bit of reluctance to move in that direction.
What do you see potentially shifting the Fed's view in an election year, Yelena? Is there anything that could?
Something external, something extraordinary happening. We did see the signing of the historical huge trade agreement last week, but will it hold? We don't know. So there are a lot of different conditions that have to be met for that to go through as planned, and for both sides to really deliver on their promises. So any de-escalation is positive, but if we see re-escalation of trade tensions this year, that could negatively impact the outlook and certainly, push the Fed's hand if needed.
What impact do you see the Phase 1 trade deal having on the economy short term, Andrew?
Certainly the main channel we've been looking at is the impact on confidence. One of the key missing ingredients in growth in the latter part of 2019, as some of these tensions became more pronounced, was this reduction in business investment. There have been a number of special factors in manufacturing, and then those we do think kind of continue under the surface. There will be the Boeing production halt in the first quarter, which will have a measurable impact on growth. But I think underneath that, there will be some sense, as long as the Phase 1 agreement does look like it's on track and being implemented, at least to a reasonable degree, there will be some marginal lift of corporate sentiment, corporate basically decision-making that favors more investment. Now, one of the key factors we'll still need to monitor on that front is whether corporate profits and basically other factors like global demand, corporate profits are also picking up, because we view those as a more stable prerequisite and factor driving business investment, not necessarily the trade deal on its own.
One thing we haven't seen much in the economy or the markets is impact of politics. Do you expect that to change, though, in an election year and when we have an impeachment trial coming up? I'll put that question to you, Yelena.
Well, I think these things could affect consumer sentiment and confidence to a certain degree, but they are unlikely to be reflected in a broader categories of consumer spending necessarily. So that really depends on the strength in the labor market. And as long as we see continued increases in job creation and potentially declines in the unemployment rate, consumers will remain happy enough to continue spending, and probably at an increased pace towards the second half of the year.
What do you see as potential headwinds, Andrew, for this expansion?
It's certainly on the global front, that picture has not fully resolved. There are various Europe, Asia has been decelerating, but is maybe stabilizing, maybe picking up. Some of this will depend on, once again, we circle back to the trade deal. But you do see lower structural growth around the world. And, I think one assumption is that we get this, massive pickup in demand as these uncertainties subside. But we have to remember that beneath the surface, growth rates are slow around the world for a number of reasons, including demographics, including aging populations, including also structural issues within various economies that may or may not promote investment. So I think that's going to be something that we'll be looking at. It's certainly something that's underlying the political environment in many countries. So I think that's something to watch very closely this year.
Well, it has to be said that thus far the U.S. has remained pretty insulated from contractions in the global economy. Can that continue, Yelena?
I think so, as long as the consumer remains the main driving force behind the economy. But there are certain risks, both to the upside and to the downside. Andrew mentioned business investment as a wild card that could potentially be a risk to the upside. Another thing that the administration is kind of hoping to achieve with this latest trade deal, for example, is to make sure that trade deficit actually becomes smaller. And by doing that, they can actually increase the contribution from the external sector of the economy. But that will significantly depend on global growth and the ability and willingness of other countries to purchase U.S. goods. So the latest trade deal is actually looking for a significant revamp of exports to China of U.S. products in manufacturing, energy, agriculture. But will they be able to purchase as much from us? That's a big question. So it's really, the performance of the external sector will depend on ability of other countries to really participate.
Yelena Shulyacheva and Andrew Husby of Bloomberg Economics, thanks to both of you for joining us on this holiday edition of Bloomberg Daybreak. And thanks to you as well for listening. We invite you to join us tomorrow morning at 5 a.m. Wall Street time for Bloomberg Daybreak. We'll speak live with Matt Maley, equity strategist at Miller Tabak. Right now, it's 57 minutes past the hour. I'm Nathan Hager, and this is Bloomberg.
At TUI, we're spreading sunshine early by giving away hundreds of thousands of free kids' places. So you can holiday with the little ones for less. Book today and spread the cost with £0 deposit when you pay with direct debit. From splash parks to swimming lessons. At TUI, we cross the T's, dot the I's, and put you in the middle. Direct debit on web bookings only. Free kids' places subject to limited availability. One free child place per 2 full paying adults. Booking T's and C's apply. At all protected.
Cutting for the net, scores! On the goal line, Marchand scores!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
And tucks it home!
And with this team, it's really fun to be a part of a team like that.
You can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium. From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today. Pascal gobbles up the rebound and slams it down.
Catch your favorite NBA team right here on TuneIn.
A step back, deep three is up and in.
Search NBA on TuneIn and hear all the action. The NBA lives on TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Did you know your favorite radio stations are in your pocket? Yes, the TuneIn app lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio anywhere you want. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
A
Upgrade to TuneIn Premium and get over 45 commercial-free music stations. You'll also get live commercial-free news, plus live play-by-play games from NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now a global news update.
Legal briefs forwarded. Opening arguments next. I'm Mike Moss. The White House has just handed over to the Senate the briefs it will use when it presents its opening arguments in the impeachment trial of President Trump. His legal defense team claims Trump did absolutely nothing wrong, calling the impeachment case against him flimsy and a dangerous perversion of the Constitution. Correspondent Lauren Fox reports the trial now moves full-time.
Tomorrow, we expect the session to start at 1 o'clock, and once again, you're going to see senators in their seats. This trial will begin, and it will go 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday, with a break on Sunday. You can also expect that senators aren't going to be able to have their electronics. They're not going to be able to talk to one another.
The president will be arriving in Davos at the World Economic Forum just as that trial is unfolding. Thousands are on hand for a gun rights rally in the Virginia capital of Richmond.
Free men don't need permission, do they? No. What are we guaranteed this by? The Second Amendment and God.
Correspondent Nick Valencia reports the big crowds are a challenge for police who are concerned about unrest. Protesters are opposed to Governor Ralph Northam's efforts to control gun ownership.
This is an event that happens every year, and it's hosted by the Virginia Citizens Defense League. It has taken on a new meaning, though, this year for a variety of reasons. The threats, credible threats that the governor said, the arrest that we saw from the FBI of their seven suspected neo-Nazi members, some of whom the FBI said that were on their way here. Though the critics of the governor, they don't believe that. They don't believe that there were any credible threats. They believe that was more political theater. However, security is very tight on the way in here.
China says the new respiratory illness is spreading just in time when millions of Chinese are traveling worldwide for the Lunar New Year. More than 200 cases have been reported, and today China says that virus is transmitting from person to person. I'm Mike Moss.
Here is some great news. If you missed the deadline to sign up for health insurance, or if you sign up for a plan that you're just not happy with, you still have a choice. It's called MediShare. It's the affordable alternative to health insurance, and it's worked beautifully for 25 years. They have more than 400,000 members now around the country. MediShare is a Christian healthcare sharing ministry, and over the years, members have shared over $3 billion of each other's medical bills, so they could help share your needs too. And best of all, you could save a lot of money with MediShare. The typical savings for a family is about $500 a month. Your savings could be more or less, but think about what you could do with that extra money every month. You're not stuck with a high-cost health plan. You can join MediShare anytime, so call them today and check it out. Here's the number to find out more, and there's no pressure. They are super easy to talk to. Call 844-91-BIBLE. That's 844-91-BIBLE. 844-91-BIBLE.
Puerto Rico's governor has fired some of her cabinet officials after a warehouse filled with emergency supplies was discovered. And correspondent Rafael Romo reports on the discovery of the badly needed aid.
It all started Saturday when the allegation surfaced that there was aid here that was not sent to the people who needed it back 2 years ago. At one point, about 200 people came to this location and forcibly opened one of the metal gates behind me, entered the place, and they found pallets of water, baby formula, diapers, emergency radios, and basic necessities.
The Chinese government has announced a new plan to crack down on plastic pollution across the country by 2025, including a ban on single-use plastic straws and bags. Both production and use of plastics are being regulated in China in an effort to get rid of single-use plastics. I'm Mike Moss.
And I'm Mark Mills in the Bloomberg Radio Newsroom. Boeing gets a tough message from a big buyer: dump the MAX name. Airplane leasing industry veteran Stephen Udvar-Hazy says Boeing should rename its 737 MAX to help deflect travelers' safety concerns once the grounded jet returns to the skies. Speaking at a conference in Dublin on Monday, Udvar-Hazy said the MAX brand is damaged following 2 fatal crashes last year, and there's no reason for Boeing to retain it. Deloitte's annual readiness report shows that corporate executives are increasingly concerned about environmental issues and see them as threats to their business operations. The report is based on a survey of more than 2,000 global managers and public sector leaders. BlackRock plans to drop investments with high sustainability-related risk as climate concerns drive a sweeping change in the way the firm invests its $7 trillion in assets. Philip Hildebrand, vice chairman at BlackRock, says the move was in part driven by the firm's clients.
Clients have been telling us for a while that this is an important issue. They've recognized that climate risk is investment risk. Sustainability risks are ultimately investment risks, whether it's through flooding, physical events, regulatory development. So they've understood, and they've been calling for this, in a sense, to help them get ahead of these trends.
Hildebrand spoke with Bloomberg Television at the Davos Economic Forum. A pneumonia outbreak in central China has widened, with more than 200 people now diagnosed with a new SARS-like virus. The number of cases in China surged over the weekend. Financial markets are closed in the U.S. for the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday. In Europe, the FTSE 100 closed down 0.3%. The DAX in Germany up almost 0.2%. The Nikkei in Japan closed up almost 0.2%, and the Hang Seng in Hong Kong was off 0.9%. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Mark Mills. This is Bloomberg.
This is Bloomberg Best.
Bloomberg Best is about the insight and the context that we get from our guests.
It's a great way to catch up on some of the stories you might have missed on the Bloomberg.
Stories you're not going to find in any other news organization. Bloomberg Best. Bloomberg's best stories of the week. Powered by 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries around the world.
I'm Denise Pellegrini, and on this edition of Bloomberg Best, former Fed Chair Alan Greenspan on entitlement spending.
We've got to resolve this issue.
The euro.
I was wrong.
And on what was in the briefcase.
My wife prepared my lunch.
Bloomberg surveillance host Tom Keene sat down with Greenspan, and he began by asking him about the consequences of an aging society.
Well, that's the most critical issue to determining our future. Because if you observe what happens as people age, 100 years ago, they never retired. They just worked until the end. Now retirement has become a very significant element, not only for the individuals, but a number, obviously, is heavily involved in health care. And Social Security is paying. All sorts of entitlements are involved, and they're growing very rapidly because the average age expectancy of, say, the American public has changed very dramatically, and it's changing such that we're seeing as the critical economic forces now the fact that Social Security benefits, Medicare, Medicaid, are statistically very obviously crowding out gross domestic savings in the United States. And gross domestic savings is a major area of funding gross domestic investment. And investment is basically the base of I would say most every other aspect of growth you can think of. Very specifically, it's heavily involved in anybody who's doing any forecasting.
Americans all, and frankly around the world, all understand this. They understand it's a changing America. Ned Phelps, the laureate of Columbia, talks about dynamism, the vitality that's out there. What is the solution to what seems to be an older America, and a solution to a more stagnant economic growth that comes from it?
The problem is that the solutions are so politically difficult that very few people even want to raise the issue. If you look at what the data we're dealing with is, it's a very major. Well, first of all, go back. Remember, the Social Security Administration occurred well before World War II, but the payments didn't begin until, and they've now become extraordinarily large and rising. And if the Office of Management and Budget projections, which are almost mechanical by using the growing population of the elderly, they're getting huge increases in the need for finding funding for social benefits. And the problem basically that we're looking at in the future is if we really extend the system, it says productivity would have to slow down, or we find alternate means of funding. And there are alternate means. Sweden went through very much this issue a decade or two ago, and they switched from defined benefit programs to defined contribution programs for all of their various elements of welfare, and that had a dramatic effect because it was self-financing. And if that doesn't occur, we're going to find very severe budget problems.
You and your generation were able to provide leadership on these key entitlement issues by setting up bipartisan committees, trying to pull away from the politics of the moment to come to a set of solutions that politicians could say, well, we're going to do it because Greenspan and the rest of them say we can do that. Can we do the committees, the bipartisan efforts now in this polarized Washington?
Well, remember, I ran a Social Security Commission in 1983. Simple issue of changing the age. This is 1983. We wanted to change the age by several years, and we ended up finally getting it okayed, effective 1998 or something like
10, 15 years out.
Yeah. I've forgotten the exact date, but it's not that far out. But it was very substantial, beyond. I was thinking in terms of 6 months.
Right, and they were thinking in terms of 60 years.
Because that's the only way they could get political adjustment.
I want to, looking at your recent work of looking at an aging America and greater use of the medical system and such, and then moving over to a dearth of savings, and then moving over to a lack of investment from that. I want to focus on savings, and that the crutch for decades has been let the foreigners come in and assist us in our lack of savings. Do we risk in the new turmoil and the new globalization seeing foreigners walk away from investment in U.S. securities?
That is a very good question. I'm not sure I would know the answer to that, nor does anybody really know the answer.
Bloomberg's Tom Keene with Alan Greenspan. And coming up, the former Fed chair's concern about a drop in productivity. If you have a Bloomberg terminal, you can see all the Bloomberg Best stories at Best Go. You're listening to Bloomberg Best.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing, LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Boeing's new CEO has officially been on the job for 1 week.
It is up to David Calhoun to oversee the efforts to get the grounded 737 MAX jetliner back in the air, and in the view of senior analyst Jeff Window at Edward Jones, he has already made some positive moves.
They're well on the way repairing the relationship with the regulators.
Window applauded the recommendation that MAX pilots get flight simulator training before they return to the cockpit. The 737 MAX may be Calhoun's most important job, but it is not the only one. The new boss must also focus on restoring Boeing's reputation, starting with the corporate culture.
Meet with employees and set the bar very high as far as the expectation on quality and safety.
Internal memos recently made public showed that some workers had doubts about Boeing's commitment to safety. Boeing lost its title as the world's biggest plane maker because of the 737 MAX grounding. For 2019, it delivered less than half as many planes as Airbus. Jeff Bellinger, Bloomberg Radio.
Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded? Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
At TUI, we're spreading sunshine early by giving away hundreds of thousands of free kids' places. So you can holiday with the little ones for less. Book today and spread the cost with £0 deposit when you pay with direct debit. From splash parks to swimming lessons. At TUI, we cross the T's, dot the I's, and put you in the middle. Direct debit on web bookings only. Free kids' places subject to limited availability. One free child place per 2 full paying adults. Booking T's and C's apply at all protected.
Got big plans for 2020? Capture and share every highlight on a gorgeous iPhone 11 with an ultra-wide camera. In Tesco Mobile's big January sale, you can get the latest iPhone for £40.75 a month with double data. That's a mighty 20 gigs. Go in store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Ends 26th of January. Was 10 gigs, now 20 gigs. 36-month credit and rolling monthly usage agreements with Tesco Mobile required. Subject to status. Phase policy applies. See tescomobile.com/terms.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
Go courtside with the NBA on TuneIn. With the NBA on TuneIn, hear your favorite team and players take on their biggest rivals during the biggest games throughout the year, including regular season showdowns, the 2020 All-Star Game, and the NBA Finals in June, featuring the home and away calls for all 30 teams. Plus, with the NBA on demand, relive the best moments of the season by listening to the past games in their entirety. Listen to the NBA all season long on TuneIn.
Is Bloomberg Best? I'm Denise Pellegrini. We continue our conversation with Alan Greenspan. Bloomberg surveillance host Tom Keene asked the former Fed chair if he's worried about U.S. economic progress coming undone.
We've got to resolve this issue. If we don't, we're going to have some very severe problems with our budget because it implies an ever rapidly growing social investment system at somebody else's expense. And the question, who in the committees of the Congress as they stand now, or in the White House or elsewhere, are going to make the types of judgments, for example, which the new Sweden government made, I think it's 1990s or something. It was a dramatic, major shift. They had to, because if they didn't, the system would fall apart. We are already at a turning point that unless and until we now start to make major changes in our costs and benefits, our productivity growth rate will slow down below where it is now, which is 1% a year. We're trying to spend more than we have. Sweden made the decision that they were going to spend only what they had, but it took 500% interest rate.
I want to talk about the underlying theories of the moment. I know you don't speak about monetary policy per se. You've always been very good about that since you've left as chairman. But I must ask a fiscal question. We have the heritage of a generation of Volcker, Greenspan, Pete Peterson, Paul Tsongas, and others that have told us that someday there will be trillion-dollar deficits. They are upon us right now. What is the Greenspan prescription to help our grandchildren and indeed your great-grandchildren with this conundrum?
First is to address the source of the problem. And the source of the problem is that we have a defined benefit program for Social Security and, in fact, to pretty much everything else. What we need to do is to go to a defined contribution program, which is the 401k is all we have. That will put a damper on where our major problem lies. And if we can resolve that, we have a good shot at resolving other issues. And the other issues are such things as funding. I'm arguing for a higher rate of all sorts of financial changes in the system, which would effectively tend to make the system somewhat better. The chances of those occurring is zero.
I've got one more question on this before we get to the monetary theories at hand, and that is your good friend Roger Ferguson at TIAA-CREF has provided real leadership about thinking now about what to do about America's failed retirement system. We went with ERISA in 1974 to a defined contribution plan. Has it been successful? And if not, what do we do to get America's retirement system more productive and better?
It's a political issue. In other words, it's a question of essentially taking benefits away from some and increasing taxes on others. And that is a very difficult task. Roger is an ideal person to be working on that. I worked with him for years. He was vice chair when I was chair for a good long. And it's doable. We were doing things that can be done provided the political system holds together. And I've seen no evidence of its holding together for these tough problems.
Let me turn now to monetary theory, and I want to begin with a theory of verbal. David Leonhardt writing, Greenspan, mumbling with great incoherence. You had such a way of communicating the message in your own unique way. We've gone anti-Greenspan now to an era of almost over-communication, many would say. Is there too much Fed speak?
Of course. The very definition of Fed speak is it shouldn't exist, period. It's a foreign language to everybody other than the Fed, and it's undecipherable language when it gets to Fed people. And it's meant as a joke, but not wholly.
Mm-hmm. If I look at the parameters that we deal with at Bloomberg every day, we have risk where we can establish probabilities, this wonderful thing, uncertainty. I think of the great Peter Bernstein here writing about this, or even Douglas North and his strange thing, ambiguity. With all of our communication and with all of our different voices, do we risk having almost too many messages and that versus a more cohesive message as we saw in your era?
No, not necessarily. I think the more that people talk about it and interact, the more likely you'll get a consensus in the political system. Our problems is not what to do. We know what to do. We do what the Swedes did. But if you take a look at what the various different things that they did to resolve their problems with exactly the same problem we have now, you would say, no way that goes on in the United States.
Can the United States of America be held equivalent to Sweden? Is there, with our diversity and with our scope and size of 4 time zones, how can we be equated with Sweden?
I grant there are major differences. The principles are the same. Defined benefit versus defined contribution. Those are accounting issues, and they stipulate basically that you can't spend, for defined contributions, you cannot spend more than you've brought in. If you could arrange to do that in the United States, that would do wonders to our current position, our $1 trillion deficit, as well as the future. I'm hesitant to believe that we're able to do that, and I'd like to see that we can do it, but until we do it, I'm concerned about the future.
You've been listening to former Fed Chair Alan Greenspan speaking with Bloomberg surveillance host Tom Keene. And coming up, Greenspan, the Reagan Republican, on his favorite politician. He says the one he liked the most was a New York Democrat. If you have a Bloomberg terminal, you can see all the Bloomberg Best stories at Best Go. You're listening to Bloomberg Best.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients, and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us #1 in client support, #1 in firm leadership, #1 in operational support, #1 in compensation, #1 in professional development support, and #1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA SIPC, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
Vatsal Shah is Senior Project Engineer at Mott MacDonald, a global engineering consultancy with more than 16,000 employees. He earned his PhD at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and as an adjunct professor is helping NJIT students explore emerging technologies.
My focus is renewable markets, emerging technologies, the idea of floating cities. What are we doing to develop that? What will happen to the city on the water? Well, you're going to have waves hitting it. You're going to have solar. How are you going to develop plants? How are you going to develop vegetation and farming? That sort of thought process happens at NJIT. We actually plan out what will the city look like. How do we develop that? So in 10 years, we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water. NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials, so taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
You can't be the only... Boredom, fitness enemy #1. So don't just run. Run, mix it up, skip, run, give yourself a lift, mix it up, lift, mix it up, run, lift, splash, skip, lift, run, it's crunch time, skip, mix it up, run, mix it out of boxing class, skip, run, splash, skip, run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run, mix it up, skip. Makes it run. Makes it.
Right, I've got the phone bill here. Lucy's school friends, 3 hours. Dan, 5 gig on mobile games. And who was on the phone to my brother until 3 a.m?
Nigel, I think we need to talk.
Get control of your finances. Don't miss the Sun's Money Saving Series. 5 tip-filled pullouts to help you manage your money. Pick up the Sun today.
Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded. Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Want to know a quick, easy way to see if your favorite podcasts have a new episode available? Just go to the home screen on your TuneIn app and see the latest editions under the Your New Episode section. Happy listening.
Pascal gobbles up the rebound and slams it down.
Catch your favorite NBA team right here on TuneIn.
A step back, deep three is up and in.
Search NBA on TuneIn and hear all the action. The NBA lives on TuneIn.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards at the goal line. It's intercepted.
Listen live as the action unfolds, or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught. It is in for the right side for the touchdown to Kansas.
Search NFL today.
President Trump's legal team argues Trump did absolutely nothing wrong, calling the impeachment case against him flimsy and a dangerous perversion of the Constitution. More from correspondent Caitlin Collins.
You are essentially seeing the White House say that they feel it was a slanted process in the House, and now they are going to make the president's case here.
The brief from Trump's lawyers has meant as a counter to a brief filed 2 days ago by House Democrats laying out the impeachment case. Gun rights advocates and others are rallying in and around Virginia's Capitol Square to protest state gun control efforts by the state legislature's newly Democratic majority. Correspondent Sarah Seidner is there.
Thousands, not hundreds, perhaps tens of thousands of people. So far, it has been very quiet. They're all here for one single reason, and that is they do not like having their rights when it comes to guns in any way stopped.
Wall Street closed for MLK Day. I'm Mike Moss.
And I'm Mark Mills in the Bloomberg Radio Newsroom. The International Monetary Fund predicted the world economy will strengthen in 2020, though at a slightly slower pace than previously estimated, citing threats related to trade and tensions in the Middle East. The IMF said global growth will accelerate to a 3.3% rate this year from an estimated 2.9% in 2019. That marks the first pickup in 3 years. Both figures, though, are down compared with forecasts in October. Markets are closed today for the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday, but traders still have plenty to look out for in the week ahead, as we hear from Bloomberg's Karen Moscow.
The World Economic Forum, the annual gathering of global leaders in politics, business, and culture, returns to Davos tomorrow. Bank of England Governor Mark Carney is among those scheduled to speak. That's the same day we'll be watching for earnings from Netflix and UBS. A report Wednesday could show an uptick in sales of previously owned U.S. homes in December, and the ECB holds its first policy meeting of 2020 on Thursday. Karen Moscow, Bloomberg Radio.
Checking the financial markets, with the U.S. markets closed, volume was light in the overseas markets. In London, the FTSE 100 closed down 0.3%. The DAX in Germany was up almost 0.2%. In Asia, Japan's Nikkei finished up almost 0.2%, and the Hang Seng in Hong Kong dropped 0.9% in Monday trading. Apple CEO Tim Cook said he's hopeful and optimistic the Intergovernmental Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development will strike a deal on corporation tax as his company battles with the European Union over a tax bill. Speaking at an event in Dublin on Monday, Cook said the debate on taxing complex multinational companies needs to take place at a global level. Moody's lowered Hong Kong's rating as a long-term issuer of debt by 1 notch on Monday. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Mark Mills. This is Bloomberg.
You're listening to Bloomberg Best on Bloomberg Radio.
I'm Denise Pellegrini. And we continue our conversation with Alan Greenspan. Bloomberg surveillance host Tom Keene asked the former Fed chair about what he sees as the dying tradition of bipartisanship.
I'm a Republican. Reagan Republican, if you want to be exact.
Okay.
Daniel Patrick Moynihan, the senator from New York, a Democrat, was my favorite senator up until the day he died and since. It's a different world. I remember speaking to people like Hubert Humphrey and like when he was running for president. You know, I said to him, I said, look, I'm not going to vote for you. I had the audacity to say such things. I say, but you know, if you get elected president of this country, I'm not sure we're going to be in any worse shape, and we may well be in better shape.
Well, within that, and since we're speaking of another time and place, I love this quote, again, this is from David Leonhardt of the New York Times, of course, from his wonderful review of a book on, I'm afraid to say this, 13 years ago, The Age of Turbulence. Alan Greenspan and Gerald Ford, he always understood what he knew and what he didn't know. What happened to our modern politicians where they don't have the humility of the gentleman from Michigan?
It's the ones who are voted in. I mean, for example, Moynihan being the classic case in point, it's exactly the same issue that you have to go back to the electorate and say, whom are you voting to run the country? And we're getting quality which requires a significant improvement and an ability to talk across the aisle, so to speak. I mean, there are large numbers of Republicans and Democrats extraordinarily adept at governance, and the difficulty is they're in the minority or don't get second terms or things of that nature. So it's a very deep-seated quality that goes back to the roots of our system. I'm glad we're talking about the Constitution because it would be very helpful if a lot more people went back and read some of the stuff that the founding fathers of this country wrote and commented on. The conceptual level is really fascinating.
Within the amendment over the years, and I think of George Will's book last year, hearkening back to those times, then we come up to crises along the way, whether it was the panic of, I think it was 1872, or we go to the panic of 1907 and the advent of the Federal Reserve System. Are we at a fragility now, even with our supposed good economic growth? Are we at a point now of institutional crisis like what we confronted in 1907?
Well, 1907 was a massive economic collapse. It wasn't the worst that we've had by any means, but it was the roots of the Federal Reserve because it set in motion in 1913 the Federal Reserve Act. It came essentially out of that turmoil. But what we need to do now is to recognize, how do we have a system which works, which creates Hamiltons and Jeffersons and Washingtons? We don't have that today.
My colleague Michael McKee has a very simple question with his excellence in economics, and he just simply says, where's the inflation? Where is the inflation today? I mean, we're having a big argument about the new regime of the Fed and where Fed thinking's going. Should 2% go to here? Evans of Chicago says inflation higher. Forget about all the debates, and I know you don't want to talk about individual Fed officials. Where's the inflation today?
Well, the problem basically is that is not the question. The question basically, what the forecasts of the monetary authorities are with respect to inflation, or with respect to economic growth, and any of the other things that are involved, is a secondary question. To be sure, a critical requirement of a governor of the Federal Reserve is to be a good economic forecaster. In fact, I remember back when I started at the Fed, I recognized that the only particular skill I could bring to the table was I had a real understanding of how the economy worked and how the data system worked. And I found that very useful in making my judgments, not the rest of the board, of how I thought the system ought to be moving.
You've been listening to former Fed Chair Alan Greenspan with Bloomberg Surveillance host Tom Keene. And coming up, Greenspan's insight into central bank decision-making. If you have a Bloomberg terminal, you can see all the Bloomberg Best stories at Best Go. You're listening to Bloomberg Best.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Elite advisory firms rely on BNY Mellon's Pershing to meet the needs of their most complex clients. Karen Novak, Chief Operating Officer at Pershing Advisor Solutions, explains how.
At BNY Mellon's Pershing, we bring customized insights and strategies to help you grow your advisory business and stay on the leading edge. We can support the needs of your most sophisticated clients with a full range of investment and wealth management solutions, from access to private banking to consolidated bank and brokerage custody. Learn why so many of the largest advisory firms turn to us for the financial strength and high-touch service that BNY Mellon's Pershing can provide. Are you well positioned to stand out from your competition?
Learn more at Pershing.com or call 800-445-4467. Brokerage custody provided by Pershing LLC and other services provided by Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC. Both members of FINRA and SIPC. Private banking and bank custody provided by BNY Mellon NA. Member FDIC.
With the Bloomberg.
I spy with my little eye something beginning with P.
People.
No, parrot.
I'll have to remember my binoculars next time.
Although you might not be able to see it, your small actions can have a real impact with Shell. Every time you fill up and use Shell Go Plus, you'll be protecting and replanting forests around the world. Make the change. Drive carbon neutral. Shell. Go well. See goplus.shell.com/CO2 for details.
Whatever job you're searching for, you can find it on LinkedIn. First jobs, flexible jobs, keep me out the cold jobs, advertising jobs, accounting jobs, HR, PR, even ER jobs, East London jobs, West London jobs, extra hour in bed jobs, startup jobs, late start jobs, get home in the daylight jobs, banking jobs, building jobs, flexible working on a Friday jobs, or even voiceover jobs, which is how I ended up recording this ad. Search millions of jobs on LinkedIn and find one meant for you.
Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded? Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
You don't just live in one room, so why should your Wi-Fi? With Sky Broadband's Wi-Fi guarantee, you'll get Wi-Fi in every room or money back. Perfect for food shopping in the bedroom, gaming in your PJs in the lounge, or streaming sci-fi movies in the kitchen. Get Sky's super-fast broadband and Wi-Fi guarantee. £32 a month for 18 months with $19.95 setup. Click on the banner now.
Sky Fibre errors, Sky Kit required. Refund on boost component of subscription paid during current minimum term up to date of claim. Minimum 3 megabits per second or money back. Prices may change during minimum term. See sky.com/guarantee.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
On this week's On the Media, we peel away the many layers of the Warren Sanders sexism sideshow.
The first layer is, can we acknowledge that in a country that has only elected male presidents throughout its history, that gender is a factor?
Also, depressed by politics? We have a plan for that. Listen to On the Media from WNYC. Listen to the On the Media podcast on TuneIn today.
This is not a commercial. This is a reminder. With TuneIn Premium, you could be listening to more music commercial-free. Get over 45 commercial-free music stations. Visit TuneIn.com/premium to upgrade.
Heading for the net, scores! On the goal line, Marchand scores!
Hockey fans, the 2019-20 NHL season is here.
And tucks it home!
And with this team, it's really fun to be a part of a team like that.
You can hear the action live on TuneIn Premium. From regular season action to the All-Star Game and through the Stanley Cup in June. Hear the home and away call for every game, for every team live. At home or on the go, never miss a game with the NHL on TuneIn Premium.
Upgrade today. A reminder, Michael Bloomberg, a Democratic presidential candidate, is the founder and majority owner of Bloomberg LP, parent of Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update. Now the news.
President Trump's legal team argues Trump did absolutely nothing wrong, calling the impeachment case against him flimsy and a dangerous perversion of the Constitution. More from correspondent Caitlin Collins.
You are essentially seeing the White House say that they feel it was a slanted process in the House, and now they are going to make the president's case here.
The brief from Trump's lawyers is meant as a counter to a brief filed 2 days ago by House Democrats laying out the impeachment case. Gun rights advocates and others are rallying in and around Virginia's Capitol Square to protest state gun control efforts by the state legislature's newly Democratic majority. Correspondent Sarah Seidner is there.
Thousands, not hundreds, perhaps tens of thousands of people. So far, it has been very quiet. They are all here for one single reason, and that is they do not like having their rights when it comes to guns in any way stopped.
Wall Street closed for MLK Day. I'm Mike Moss.
This is Bloomberg Best. I'm Denise Pellegrini. And we continue our deep dive into the mind of Alan Greenspan. Tom Keene, host of Bloomberg Surveillance, asked the former Fed chair what he thinks about the makeup and effectiveness of the modern central bank.
There is a pretty simple consensus of what constitutes stability. The issue, whether it's 2%, 2.5%, or whatever, there's no disagreement on how a market economy, which is what we all function with, is supposed to manage itself. To the extent that we fail in our management, the system will suffer. To the extent we make progress through insights, it will improve. We will never forecast it any more than we will ever be able to forecast the future. Since Nostradamus, of course, it could. You can't have perfect monetary policy because we can never have perfect forecasts. But we can do the best that we can, come to judgments, which over the years have not been bad to the Fed. I think the Fed's performance has been fairly good, and I think the Bank of England has been good. The Bundesbank has been hugely controlling of a lot that goes on in Europe generally. I mean, these are professional people who do a professional job. Is it 100%?
How do you respond to the idea that these elites are creating a policy for elites and that they've left behind so many when we look at income inequality and wealth inequality?
Well, just remember, if you're a banker and you're serving your customers, you're going to find out that the amount of money each customer has is different. And that are you going to do this customer or this customer? Depends. You are required as a banker to do the best for the institution as a whole, and that will cause an obvious bias towards those who have larger funds. It's good business. It may not be good politics, but banking is not a social fund.
I'm fascinated by your thoughts on the European experiment. Your generation had to pick up the pieces out of World War II. There was leadership from Konrad Adenauer and others to put back together a Europe. And the miracle was how quickly it seemed to come back together over 10 years or so. There's been a European monetary experience. There's been somewhat of a fiscal union, banking union, but it's been clumsy the whole way. Do you worry that Europe will have its experiment fall apart, or are you a European optimist?
Well, I am worried about something which very few people focus on. It's the clearing system for all central banks in the Euro system. At the close of business every day, you would expect it's 0-0, and which is what a clearing system does. At the moment, and for the most recent years, the Deutsche Bundesbank has held 2/3 of the aggregate claims. The net debtors have been Italy and Spain and a few others, but it's an unbalanced system, and it's too much German control, and it's hung together well because the people who run the Bundesbank know that they have to be very careful about how they distribute funds and the like, because it could be damaging to everybody. But the European system is, which as you correctly point out, came together. The fact when you look at some of the institutions that came out of World War II, in which Germany is a key factor, when Germany was the key person or persons that we were fighting against, and it was a remarkably short period of time. And to say that Germany was able to change as much as it has, and which came as a great surprise to a lot of people, but Germany has been very effective in financially leading the Euro area, I should say. Britain obviously is outside. I think that they've done things extraordinarily well, but I am concerned that the system itself is too large. I mean, let's just give you a case in point. Not only do the Germans fund Southern Europe, but when you look at the trade data, Germany is a net financial exporter to Southern Europe. So is Luxembourg, incidentally, which is the only other major one. And that's telling you got a system which it's out of balance when there's no political control over the whole system.
Okay, there's no political control, but is it because they are using one currency? I mean, has the one currency experiment failed for Europe and has led to those huge imbalances financially?
Well, I'm not sure. It's January 1st, 1990, when the euro, I was one of the members involved in discussing that in the G7, and I thought that the euro was a terrible idea, and for a lot of reasons. I was wrong. They really created a fascinatingly functioning system. So I remember I got up in a meeting in the Banque de France, to my good friends, many good friends. I said, I want to express my apologies. I was wrong on this. My trouble is I'm not sure I was.
Well, let me turn with one final topic. And, of course, this is the letter you wrote last year with Paul Volcker and of course our Christine Harper writing a final book with Paul Volcker. Tell us about the Paul Volcker. I have here in my notes, the wonderful preparation that they did here that day in June of 1987. Of course, no one saw a crisis coming at the time. And there's the New York Times headline, Volcker out after 8 years as Fed Reserve Chief. Reagan chooses Greenspan. That's sort of a terse headline as hell. What was that day like where there was a shift from Volcker? What was that shift like from Volcker to Greenspan?
Well, my view was that he was the most effective Federal Reserve chairman in the history of the Federal Reserve. And my view is that what he went through to get the inflation under control, and that I said, I will do everything I can to maintain the Volcker procedures and what he did. And I thought we were successful in doing that. But you have to make a difference between the person who started it and those of us who went on and sort of did what was required. The funniest thing is that one of the things we did when I was first here is we had a reason to increase the interest rates, and it was basically a straightforward, ordinary thing. This is about 2-3 weeks into my term. I get a note from Paul and says, "Today you are a central banker."
Tell us about your legacy. We can look at the data capture you did before being Fed chairman. We can look, as you say, as the responsibility of bringing forward the Volcker Revolution. And then there's all the challenges of the crisis, the critics, and, the blow-ups here and the blow-ups here. What would you like your legacy to be, or how would you like your legacy to be framed?
You're speaking to a biased person on this issue. I would say basically that I brought economic analysis in a way that was different from what has been historically, and I think it exists to this day. I don't say that I generated it, but I was certainly involved. You can't be there for almost 19 years without having an awful lot of effect. So I'm proud of what I did. I'm acutely aware of the mistakes that I made. And I said, could I have done otherwise? And I said, no. Unless you become a superhuman being. I used to look for my briefcase indicator, which I thought was a hilarity. And I said, I would say at some point, they should understand that the profound wisdom that's in there is my wife prepared my lunch.
And you've been listening to former Fed Chair Alan Greenspan with Tom Keene, host of Bloomberg Surveillance. And that's it for Bloomberg Best. If you have a Bloomberg terminal, you can see all the Bloomberg Best stories at Best Go. I'm Denise Pellegrini. This is Bloomberg.
Boredom. Fitness enemy number one. So don't just run. 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 Mix it up. Skip. Run. Skip. Run. Give yourself a lift. Mix it up. Lift. Mix it up. Run. Lift. Splash. Skip. Lift. Run. It's crunch time. Skip. Mix it up. Run. Mix it out of boxing class. Skip. Run. Splash. Skip. Run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run. Mix it up. Skip. Mix it. Run.
Mix it. Let's get this right, sir. You didn't see 3 men dressed as clowns take off in a van with a Renaissance painting because you were distracted by, and I quote, A sporty red compact SUV with a bold mesh grille, a sculpted bonnet with sweeping roofline on diamond-cut alloys.
And beautiful rear haunches.
So, you saw a Jaguar E-Pace. But what about the clowns?
What clowns?
Jaguar E-Pace, designed to steal attention. Search Jaguar E-Pace.
Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded? Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
On a TUI tour, our English-speaking local guides will take you off the tourist trail. They won't just help you find the perfect souvenir, they'll show you how to make it. Choose from over 70 unforgettable tours worldwide. From tranquil temples in India to sunrise safaris in South Africa, on a TUI tour, we cross the T's, dot the I's, and put you in the middle. Book now and enjoy up to £200 off per booking. Booking T's and C's and minimum spend applies. Selected holidays only. At all protected.
Pascal gobbles up the rebound and slammed it down.
Catch your favorite NBA team right here on TuneIn.
A step back deep three is up and in.
Search NBA on TuneIn and hear all the action. The NBA lives on TuneIn.
Today at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now a global news update. Trump defense briefs, big gun rights rally. I'm Mike Moss. Trial briefs released today by the Trump impeachment defense team argue the impeachment case presented by Democrats is flimsy.
They are calling on the Senate to reject these articles of impeachment and acquit the president. They go on and they say that they believe that the House impeachment process was a charade, in their words, not only just in the substance, but also the process. And they feel like this is actually going to be the first time that the president is able to lay out his case.
That's White House correspondent Caitlin Collins with more from Capitol Hill. Here's correspondent Linda Kenyon.
House and Senate Democrats have been clamoring for witness testimony in the trial. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and many of his fellow Republicans initially pushed back, but now may put the matter to a vote. Republican Representative Francis Rooney of Florida says, of course there should be witnesses.
I think they should hear the witnesses that can bear on on all ramifications of the case.
In particular, Rooney says former National Security Advisor John Bolton should be called to testify.
A large gun rights rally in Virginia's state capitol has been peaceful so far as it unfolds amid heavy security as authorities look to prevent the kind of violence that took place in nearby Charlottesville 3 years ago. Democratic Governor Ralph Northam declared a temporary state of emergency last week to ban open and concealed firearms and other weapons from the state capitol grounds. The demonstrators oppose Northam's efforts to impose restrictions on gun ownership. Delta Airlines had a very good year, and instead of just verbally thanking workers for the company's performance, announced it would pay them $1.6 billion in profit-sharing bonuses. That means every eligible employee will receive a check next month for more than 16% of their annual salary, which is the equivalent of an extra 2 months of pay. I'm Mike Moss.
Adopted her, she was a mess. Scabs, itching, licking, missing fur, hot spots, a thin, dull coat. So I take the dog to the vet for the standard run-of-the-mill tests and treatments. No results. I hear your advertisement on the radio. DINOVITE.com. So I get the 5-pound box of Dinovite and the Lico Chops within a 4-week total. Instead of a German Setter, I have a German Shepherd. Sheba is a 105 lean pounds of shiny, smooth, happy dog for life because she gets fed Dinovite. And the results, they're just incredibly outstanding. And she loves it. When you rescue a dog, you have to do the right thing. You've got to feed them right for life. Do the Dinovite. Dinovite for life.
Won't believe how happy your dog will be.
859-428-1000. DINOVITE.com.
2 people are dead after a shooting at a club in San Antonio, Texas. Correspondent Clayton Neville reports a manhunt is underway for the suspect.
San Antonio Police Chief William McManus says the shooting happened at Ventura, a music venue on a portion of the city's Riverwalk.
There was an altercation between a group or individuals. One person at least pulled out a gun, started shooting.
2 dead and 5 hurt. It's not known if anyone specific was targeted in the shooting.
Pope Francis today condemned what he calls the barbaric resurgence of anti-Semitism around the world, linking anti-Semitism to the rise of populism. The Pope said next week's 75th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz death camp should serve as a reminder not to become indifferent. Pope Francis did not specifically mention any countries or populist movements in his comments today. I'm Mike Moss.
And I'm Mark Mills in the Bloomberg Radio Newsroom. With U.S. financial markets closed for the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday, trading volume was light in most overseas markets. In Europe, London's FTSE 100 was down 0.3%. The DAX in Germany was up almost 0.2%. In Asia, Japan's Nikkei finished up almost 0.2%, and the Hang Seng in Hong Kong was down 0.9%. After the stock market's outsized gains in 2019, is there a risk of a major correction? Speaking to Bloomberg Television at the Davos Economic Forum, Ann Richards, Chief Executive Officer of Fidelity International, said she doesn't see a major threat of a correction.
When you've had a year like that where you've seen asset prices rise probably ahead of earnings, then you're always a little bit more vulnerable to some degree of volatility and correction because people are locking in profits. But it doesn't feel like the pieces are in place for a substantial market correction.
President Vladimir Putin proposed giving broad new authority to set the direction of foreign, domestic, and economic policy to the State Council as part of the constitutional overhaul he announced last week. Putin laid out the details of the plan, widely seen as the Kremlin's effort to lay the groundwork for Putin to extend his rule beyond the end of his current term in 2024, in draft amendments to the Constitution submitted to Parliament Monday. The hundreds of private jets expected to fly people out of Davos this week from the annual World Economic Forum will be able to fill their tanks with fuel designed to lower carbon emissions. As the annual global event aims to beef up its green credentials, so-called Sustainable Aviation Fuel, or SAF, will be available at the Zurich airport. In the UK, asking prices for homes increased by the most for any January on record, in a sign that the Conservatives' December election win boosted confidence. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Mark Mills. This is Bloomberg.
This is Bloomberg Law.
Some complicated international law issues here. What kind of docket is Chief Justice Roberts facing?
Interviews with prominent attorneys and Bloomberg legal experts.
Joining me is Bloomberg News Supreme Court reporter Greg Storr. Neil Devon's a professor at William & Mary Law School.
And analysis of important legal issues, cases, and headlines.
President Trump lost resoundingly in the circuit courts, an unusually large number of immigration cases.
Bloomberg Law with June Grosso from Bloomberg Radio.
Welcome to Bloomberg Law. I'm June Grosso. Ahead in this hour, President Trump seems to be winning his legal battle over the wall, at least for now. And expect more privacy lawsuits this year, with Facebook's high court fights leading the way. President Trump's planned U.S. border wall with Mexico got another boost after a federal appeals court lifted an order that had blocked his use of $3.6 billion in military construction funds. Joining me is Leon Fresco, a partner at Holland & Knight. So, Leon, what did the Fifth Circuit decide?
Well, what the Fifth Circuit decided was the district court had issued a stay preventing, or had issued an injunction rather, preventing the construction of the border wall from occurring because the county and the state of, and the city of El Paso was going to be harmed by the fact that military construction money that was scheduled to go to Fort Bliss was going to be instead spent on the border wall. And so the court had enjoined that construction of the border wall and that diversion of funding on the basis that it violated the appropriations law that Congress had passed. What the Fifth Circuit did was it issued a stay of that injunction, meaning it said that the injunction basically doesn't exist. meaning that the president can move forward and build the wall and divert the money for building the wall while the case remains pending. It may happen that later some other court ultimately says, no, you can't build the wall. But what the court says here is that there isn't a likelihood that the plaintiffs, El Paso, will succeed in this case. And so because of that, there's no need to have an injunction. And so because of that, the building of the wall should continue.
So this was a split decision, 2-1. What did the dissenting judge say?
The dissenting judge said that although he agreed that the case presented a substantial case on the merits, which was a very serious case, that the government had shown, the El Paso government had shown that there was a likelihood that it would succeed, and that the federal government hadn't shown that there would be irreparable harm that justified a stay, meaning that because the wall had never been built in the history of America, why is there suddenly an emergency that a wall needs to be built right now? And so because this irreparable harm hadn't been shown, there was no reason to stay the injunction while the case was pending. Instead, the case should have gone to its conclusion, and if the federal government had won in the end, then the wall should have been allowed to have been built.
Lower courts in both Texas and California issued stays. Why is the circuit court coming out differently?
So there was two transferring of funds that occurred. One was a transferring of funds of a couple of $1 billion in what was called counter-narcotics money, and that had been enjoined both in California and in Texas, and the Supreme Court said, no, the counter-narcotics money can be used to build the wall, because at the end of the day, the wall has a counter-narcotics function. It's stopping drugs from coming into the United States. And so then the issue remained, well, what about the diversion of the second pot of money, which had to do with military construction funds? And so this is a little bit more difficult case for the federal government to make, because the wall is not military construction. And so the question is simply, did the president have the broad authority to divert these funds? And the lower courts had ruled he did not. Nothing in the Congressional Appropriations Act gave the president that authority, but the Fifth Circuit has held that or it has implicitly held, they haven't explained this in their ruling, but they've implicitly held that the government is correct that the national emergency law, given that it is such a broad law, allows this diversion to occur, even if nothing in the funding bill allowed it to occur. And so now the Supreme Court will have probably the last word on this.
The attorneys for the plaintiffs say they're going to huddle with their clients and decide whether to ask the entire appeals court to rehear the appeal en banc, or instead ask the Supreme Court to step in. Which do you think is the better alternative for them?
Well, the Fifth Circuit is one of the most conservative courts in the country, so it's not likely that they would win in the Fifth Circuit. If the idea is just to keep this case alive for long enough that maybe, at a different time period it can get to the Supreme Court under different circumstances, then maybe that's what you do. But in the end of the day, if you wanted your best chance of winning, you would skip the en banc proceeding and try to see and take your luck with the Supreme Court. But again, I'm not that optimistic that the plaintiffs will win in the Supreme Court either.
The administration can now go forward with using the $3.6 billion from the Defense Department's military construction budget and $2.5 billion from the Pentagon's drug interdiction budget. How much money do they need to build the wall, and how much has been built?
Well, so everything depends on how you want to define these metrics. So there's a 2,000-mile southern border that separates the United States and Mexico, and 1,300 of those miles is an aquatic border, that's the Rio Grande River, and 700 miles is a land border that takes you through New Mexico, Arizona, and California. If you take the New Mexico, Arizona, and California border, there is always some barrier on all of this 700 miles of border, with the exception of an Indian reservation that exists in Arizona where the government is not able to put barrier, but there's still some voluntary barrier that actually the tribe has. So the question then is, what kind of fence is in what part of the border?
Okay, hold that thought, Leon. Coming up on Bloomberg Law, we'll find out about the wall and whether there may be another travel ban coming up. I'm June Grosso, and this is Bloomberg.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. Can you code? The Help Wanted sign is out at Citigroup, which plans to hire 2,500 computer programmers this year as technology reshapes the banking business. Big banks are spending big bucks to employ technologies that make their front office staffers more efficient.
There's really an arms race going on across Wall Street. JP Morgan spends about $11 billion a year on technology, and Citigroup is spending about $8.5 billion a year.
Bloomberg reporter Viren Vagela says these prospective employees come with a highly technical set of skills.
They've often studied data science at university. They have a mathematical background.
Citi's new coders will be dispatched to offices spanning the globe.
These new roles will be in London, Shanghai, Toronto, Dublin, New York, Pune and Chennai in India, and Tampa in Florida.
And while Citi beefs up the ranks of its computer programmers, it's also been reducing the workforce overall.
They cut it to 199,000 at the end of the third quarter, which was an 18% drop from 5 years earlier.
Gina Cervetti, Bloomberg Radio.
This is not a cat. This is not a rocket. And this is not a sale. That's right. At Smarty Mobile, we're not having a sale. While others are slashing prices, we're introducing our best ever new plans. Take our new 30-gig data SIM for just £10 a month. With unlimited calls and texts and no speed restrictions, credit checks or contract tying you down, why shop around? New plans, great value. Now that's Smarty. Grab yours today. Search Smarty Mobile. See smarty.co.uk for terms.
Harry Bikers here. This message goes out to something very special.
Yes, we're talking to you, chicken.
Maybe we've been seeing too much of each other.
But times have changed, Dave.
We've been cheating on meat.
Thing is, no stocks make veggie dishes so irresistible that cheating on meat is proper tasty.
Our dear chicken, you were the fire in my life. But it's all about you now, aubergine katsu curry. Prepare to be wined and dined, my love.
Cheat on meat with no veggie stocks.
Right, I've got the phone bill here. Lucy's school friends, 3 hours. Dan, 5 gig on mobile games. And who was on the phone to my brother until 3 a.m?
Nigel, I think we need to talk.
Get control of your finances. Don't miss the Sun's Money Saving Series. 5 tip-filled pullouts to help you manage your money. Pick up the Sun today.
Keys. Check. Phone. Check. 70s playlist downloaded. Check. Nice. There's one more thing you should check before you leave. Your travel. There's a new cycleway under construction between Kensington Olympia and Brentford Town Centre, so expect delays due to lane closures at the junction of Kew Bridge Road and Chiswick High Road. Plan ahead at tfl.gov.uk. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
You want to turn that tap off, don't you? That's because we all know that wasting isn't smart. And yet, as a nation, we waste electricity every day without knowing it because our energy system is outdated. Smart meters not only help us stop wasting energy at home, they'll also help build a more efficient energy system so we can reduce waste across the nation. From the Campaign for a Smarter Britain.
Consumer action required for personal savings.
You're listening to Bloomberg Law with June Grosso from Bloomberg Radio.
I've been talking with Leon Fresco about President Trump's recent win at the Fifth Circuit over the border wall. So, Leon, you're about to explain how much of the wall is actually built.
So the question then is, what kind of fence is in what part of the border? And so if you're talking about 30-foot fence, like the fence that recently somebody was stuck on because it was so high that once they climbed it, they were terrified to go down. That kind of fence is in less than 100 miles of the 2,000-mile border. If you're talking about any kind of barrier, there's something like 689 miles of the 2,000-mile border that has some barrier in it that's separating the United States and Mexico, although it isn't a wall of any kind. It's not actually a wall, and it's actually kind of a fencing type thing where the fence is still penetrable by people who seek to climb it, but it's much, much harder than simply what would be a vehicle barrier where a car couldn't drive through it, but a human being could walk through it. So some of the 700 miles are these vehicle barriers. Others are what are called these Normandy fences, which are like the blocks of wood with chicken wire that are connecting through it. And so the point is, if you're talking about what the president ran on, there's less than 100 miles of that currently on the border.
Now, the Associated Press reported last week that the Trump administration is considering expanding the travel ban, timed to coincide with the third anniversary of the January 2017 executive order that announced a Muslim ban. Can they do this?
Well, I think what the Supreme Court has made clear in the Trump versus Hawaii case is if the administration uses the language of security rather than animus toward a particular group and has a security justification for implementing a ban on certain countries, and then actually maintains the ban in the same manner it has the current travel ban, which is the ban is actually more of a presumption which a person can actually overcome in an individual case. Now, although these cases have been extremely rare, it is still the case that we are accepting handfuls of people from the countries that have been banned. If that's the framework, I actually think it is indeed very possible that that ban can be expanded. But again, the court will be sensitive toward who are these countries that the ban has been extended to and why.
There are apparently, according to reporting, 7 countries that the ban will be extended to. And there's some reporting that a majority of them are Muslim, including some of the countries that were included in the first ban, but then dropped. Would that cause a problem?
Again, I think what ultimately the Supreme Court said was if the justification was security-based, even if the majority of the countries are Muslim countries, this is not going to be a problem for the court. And so the question is, what will have been the justification for this new ban? And if it's things, I'll give you an example. If it's things like, when we tried to deport you to your country doesn't accept anybody we're trying to deport. Or your country's been issuing a lot of fake passports for people, and so we don't know who we're getting, and we're constantly getting people who aren't the people we think they are. If it's those kinds of things, that's a lot more likely to survive.
So a coalition of leading civil rights organizations are asking House leaders to take up the No Ban Act. That's legislation to end the travel ban and prevent a new one. Now that the Supreme Court has ruled that the travel ban was enforceable, was constitutional, will that survive a Supreme Court review?
Yeah, what happened is this. There's a statute that the Congress wrote in the 1950s got called INA 212F that gave the ability to the president to ban one person, a group of people, an entire country for any reason that he felt was required in the national interest. And so the problem with the bans is that the Congress gave this authority to the president. If the Congress took this authority away from the president, then the president wouldn't be able to do these bans. And so what the Supreme Court actually said was that the president can lawfully exercise this banning authority that Congress gave the president. That's what the Supreme Court held. So if Congress takes away the banning authority, then the president wouldn't have it anymore.
We're not hearing any more about these, caravans of migrants coming up from Central America. Is that because the Trump administration has enacted measures to prevent that?
Absolutely. I would say, if you want to use a metaphor, you would say an invisible wall has been put in that's actually been much more effective than an actual wall. And the way to look at it as the invisible wall is that there's a patchwork of barriers designed to deter or prevent migrants from seeking asylum, which is what people were coming to do. And there's basically 3 or 4 ways this has been done, which is that a migrant who crosses the border seeking humanitarian protection today most likely gets assigned an immigration court date months in the future and is told wait in Mexico. And so many people get discouraged and don't come for that reason. They'll get discouraged during the process. Now some migrants are actually being sent to Guatemala, where they are told to apply there instead. Others are being given 7 days to find a lawyer in the United States in an expedited process. And if they lose their claims, they're being removed. And others are even being told, hey, if you're from any other country and you cross through Mexico, you had to have applied in Mexico first before applying in the United States.
Looking at the litigation on immigration that's pending, which case do you see as the most likely to be overturned, where the rule the Trump administration put into effect is most likely to be overturned by a higher court?
Sure. I think that this issue with regard to the expansion of expedited removal, which is the kind of removal where you don't have to have a removal hearing, you can just immediately issue a piece of paper and remove the person, past 14 days. The rule right now says if you've been in the country longer than 14 days, we can't just give you a piece of paper and remove you. We have to give you an actual hearing where you can actually challenge your deportation. That has been an issue that for about 100 years the Supreme Court has been ducking, because they haven't wanted to say that people who are here for an extended period of time have no rights just because they're in a legal status. They haven't wanted to say that. They have said if you just get here minutes ago when you're apprehended, you don't have these rights. But past 14 days, there starts becoming an expectation. Wait a second. You can't, how do you know if someone's been here 6 days or 20 years? And if you don't give them the opportunity to make their case, you're actually potentially making a very scary reduction of due process here. And so that's the one I think is most likely to be overturned, is the expansion of expedited removal.
Thanks, Leon. That's Leon Fresco, a partner at Holland & Knight. Coming up next on Bloomberg Law, will Facebook's high court fights lead the way in privacy litigation this year? I'm June Grosso, and this is Bloomberg.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong. Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing, LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Boredom, fitness enemy number one. So don't just run. Run. run, mix it up, skip, run, skip, run. Give yourself a lift, mix it up, lift, mix it up, run, lift, splash, skip, lift, run. It's crunch time. Skip, mix it up, run, mix it out of boxing class. Skip, run, splash, skip, run. Mix it up at Virgin Active and get stronger, fitter, faster. Join now for 12 months and pay nothing until March. T's and C's apply. Run, mix it up, skip, mix it, run. Mix it.
Sometimes in business, you have to take risks, but trading across borders and currencies shouldn't be one of them. With Western Union Business Solutions, we can help you manage the risk of doing business internationally. Our valuable experience, expert knowledge, and extensive global network makes us the ideal trusted partner for your business. And with our customer-focused support team, you'll receive a dedicated solution and personalized service. Visit westernunionbusiness.com. Western Union Business Solutions, a global financial network you can trust.
You want to turn that tap off, don't you? That's because we all know that wasting isn't smart. And yet, as a nation, we waste electricity every day without knowing it because our energy system is outdated. Smart meters not only help us stop wasting energy at home, they'll also help build a more efficient energy system so we can reduce waste across the nation. From the campaign for a smarter Britain.
Consumer action required for personal savings.
Hello, I'm your captain for today's Virgin Atlantic flight. Please drop everything and pay close attention to the following announcement. The sail is now on. Our crew are ready to take your bags and stresses away. The cocktails are ready to serve, the movies are loaded, and we're all set for takeoff to the Caribbean. So, take your seat in our award-winning economy class. We're ready to go when you are.
The Virgin Atlantic sail. Fly amazing for less. For more details, visit virginatlantic.com.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to stay connected with the audio that matters to you.
Hey, NFL fan, can't watch the game? Can't be there? No biggie. With your TuneIn Premium membership, you already have an all-access pass to every team and every game in the league. Amazing, right?
Steps up, floats it towards, at the goal line, it's intercepted!
Listen live as the action unfolds, or on demand when you can. Anytime, anywhere, all season long.
Right side, it is caught, it is in for the right side for the touchdown to Keenan.
Search NFL today.
Opening arguments in the impeachment trial of the president begin tomorrow. The president's defense team today released briefs calling the whole process a charade. Few arrests and mostly peaceful. That's the update on a massive gun rights rally in Richmond, opposing Virginia's Democratic effort to impose restrictions on gun ownership. Delta Airlines is sharing its success with its workers. Correspondent Jan Johnson reports.
Every eligible employee will get a check next month for what amounts to an extra 2 months' pay, a total of $1.6 billion in profit-sharing bonuses. Delta said it's the 6th year in a row that the company paid out more than $1 billion to its employees in a plan that began after a merger with Northwest. Full-time and part-time workers get a check, the only ones excluded being the company's highest-ranking executives.
China says it's discovered human-to-human transmission of a virus that is spreading and has already caused deaths and affected hundreds. I'm Mike Moore.
And I'm Mark Mills in the Bloomberg Radio Newsroom. Boeing gets a tough message from a big buyer: dump the MAX name. Airplane leasing industry veteran Stephen Udvar-Hazy says Boeing should rename its 737 MAX to help deflect travelers' safety concerns once the grounded jet returns to the skies. Speaking at a conference in Dublin on Monday, Udvar-Hazy said the MAX brand is damaged following 2 fatal crashes last year, and there's no reason for Boeing to retain it. Deloitte's annual readiness report shows that corporate executives are increasingly concerned about environmental issues and see them as threats to their business operations. The report is based on a survey of more than 2,000 global managers and public sector leaders. BlackRock plans to drop investments with high sustainability-related risk as climate concerns drive a sweeping change in the way the firm invests its $7 trillion in assets. Philip Hildebrand, vice chairman at BlackRock, says the move was in part driven by the firm's clients.
Clients
clients have been telling us for a while that this is an important issue. They've recognized that climate risk is investment risk. Sustainability risks are ultimately investment risks, whether it's through flooding, physical events, regulatory development. So they've understood, and they've been calling for this, in a sense, to help them get ahead of these trends.
Hildebrand spoke with Bloomberg Television at the Davos Economic Forum. Hildebrand spoke with Bloomberg Television at the Davos Economic Forum. A pneumonia outbreak in central China has widened, with more than 200 people now diagnosed with a new SARS-like virus. The number of cases in China surged over the weekend. Financial markets are closed in the U.S. for the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday. In Europe, the FTSE 100 closed down 0.3%. The DAX in Germany up almost 0.2%. The Nikkei in Japan closed up almost 0.2%, and the Hang Seng in Hong Kong was off 0.9%. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Mark Mills. This is Bloomberg.
This is Bloomberg Law with June Grosso from Bloomberg Radio.
You may know this voice.
I can play music, answer questions, get the news on weather, create to-do lists, and much more.
It's the voice of Amazon's Alexa, the virtual assistant that can do everything from reminding you about appointments to reading the news. But with the growing number of devices that collect personal data, from smartwatches to apps, the public's concern about how that data is used is growing, and tech companies are facing more privacy and data breach lawsuits. Legal experts say they'll be watching Facebook's battles to overturn court rulings on biometric privacy and robocalls this year. Those could help explain when consumers can sue for privacy violations. Joining me to talk about privacy litigation is Daniel Stoller, Bloomberg Law Senior Legal Editor. So, Dan, Facebook is asking the Supreme Court to take up two cases on biometric privacy and robocalls because it didn't like the rulings of the Ninth Circuit. Tell us about those cases.
Yeah, so one of the cases involves Facebook and biometrics. Pretty much they were sued by a user who had uploaded his photos to Facebook's website, and Facebook had then used facial recognition software to get biometric data from that to help tag the photos. But however, Facebook is arguing that just a basic violation of this Illinois biometric privacy law isn't enough to get standing in federal court. However, the Ninth Circuit had said that just the mere capture of this biometric information, facial recognition data, is enough of a privacy intrusion to sue under BIPA. So going forward, that could help clarify how companies could defend against these privacy actions and how consumers can sue under that type of case. In the Facebook robocall case, they're challenging a Ninth Circuit opinion that ruled that there was a broad definition of an auto dialer under the Telephone Consumer Protection Act, and they're also challenging whether parts of the TCPA also violates the First Amendment. It's interesting because Facebook does send text messages to users when there's suspicious account activity. When the Ninth Circuit said that they had used an auto dialer in this situation. So in this case with the robocalls, they could be on the hook for TCPA fines and violations as well.
So these cases involve standing. A party has to show that they've been injured to even bring a lawsuit. What's the Supreme Court's position?
So the Supreme Court in 2016 ruled in Spokio v. Robbins that there has to be some sort of concrete harm, and it has to be tied to the infringing bad action. So it can't be too intangible, although some courts are allowing that, the Ninth Circuit and Northern District and other California courts as well. But there's a big grouping of states, Fourth Circuit, Seventh Circuit, that say the mere risk of identity theft isn't enough. There has to be more biometric data actually being used, and you being harmed by that use would be enough for standing. However, there's also a group of other courts, as mentioned before, like the Ninth Circuit, that says you violated this law. The harm is in the collecting of that data.
So there's a circuit court split, and these laws involve high statutory fines, $1,000 to $5,000 per incident in the biometric privacy case. Does that make some legal experts think that justices will take one of these cases?
Yeah, so with the potential millions, if not multi-millions, if not more on the line for Facebook in that case, it would be interesting for the Supreme Court to not take that up. However, if they don't, it does show that they're okay with their Spokio ruling on standing and that they're comfortable with the circuit split. It may not even see that there's a large circuit split, that there's little differences between each circuit and the cases that go before it. But as millions, and if not more, is on the line, they're likely to kind of weigh in and say, all right, we're happy with our previous decisions. We don't really need to weigh back in there. There's some other cases that they've kind of looked at over the year, haven't taken up, but there wasn't that much on the line.
Is it easier to show standing in a data breach case?
It really depends. When there's an actual law, like here, the Illinois Biometric Information Privacy Act, you can point to that law and say there's statutory fines. I was harmed under that law, and because of that, I should be able to bring my case. However, at the same time, in data breaches, you have to show that there's at least a likelihood or some foreseeable risk of identity theft. Now, depending on the type of breach, if a nation state was involved, if there's not a lot of information about that breach, you may not know if your data was ever used or if it can be used in the future. Your data being used 2 years from now may not be foreseeable identity theft risk, but if you can point to a cybersecurity group or you can point to a company not doing what they needed to do, that can help convince judges as well.
I've heard a lot about the Illinois Biometric Information Privacy Act. What other states have tough or expansive tech privacy laws?
Well, there's not a lot. So the California Consumer Privacy Act, that will have a lot of new privacy rights to access, right to delete, right to opt out of the sale of your personal information. So that's going to be probably the biggest and most comprehensive state privacy law. There's also some federal privacy laws as well. There's HIPAA, health privacy, federal credit reporting laws, and then there's a bunch of other ones. Across the states, there's a lot of industry-specific ones, one focused on data brokers. Vermont has a law. Nevada also has a law that can have a right to sue. However, there's not a lot of states that give users of big tech platforms the right to directly sue.
Coming up on Bloomberg Law, we'll continue this conversation and look at how regulators are likely to ramp up enforcement of privacy laws this year. I'm June Grosso, and this is Bloomberg.
Vatsal Shah is Senior Project Engineer at Mott MacDonald, a global engineering consultancy with more than 16,000 employees. He earned his PhD at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and as an adjunct professor is helping NJIT students explore emerging technologies.
My focus is renewable markets, emerging technologies, the idea of floating cities. What are we doing to develop that? What will happen to the city on the water? Well, you're going to have waves hitting it. You're going to have solar. How are you going to develop plants? How are you going to develop vegetation and farming? That sort of thought process happens at NJIT. We actually plan out what will the city look like. How do we develop that? So in 10 years, we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water. NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials. So taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Rich is just a really good guy. The term good egg isn't enough to describe him. He's also certified organic and free range. Rich puts the cap back on everything. The toothpaste, the olive oil, the shampoo, everything. He lets his 10-year-old nephew beat him at virtual tennis, even though he can straight up slay his 10-year-old nephew in virtual tennis. When the toilet paper is running low, Rich replaces the roll on the actual holder, not just on the back of the toilet. Rich is texting and driving. Rich, no. What are you doing, Rich? I was just telling everyone how great you are. Texting and driving makes good people look bad. Visit StopTextStopWrecks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Hard Megxit or soft Megxit? Have Harry and Meghan misjudged public feeling? And what does their departure mean for the future of the monarchy? With questions mounting, turn to The Telegraph for answers. Subscribe today at telegraph.co.uk.
This is not a cat. This is not a rocket. And this is not a sale. That's right. At Smarty Mobile, we're not having a sale. While others are slashing prices, we're introducing our best ever new plans. Take our new 30-gig data SIM for just £10 a month. With unlimited calls and texts and no speed restrictions, credit checks or contract tying you down, why shop around? New plans, great value. Now that's Smarty. Grab yours today. Search Smarty Mobile. See smarty.co.uk for terms.
Taking it for a spin has changed. Giving it a whirl has changed.
With £500 towards a qualifying new Vauxhall with 4.9% APR representative when you take a test drive, the rules have changed. Book your test drive now. Vauxhall. New rules Britannia. Allowance provided as deposit contribution on qualifying new Vauxhalls. Conditional sale and personal contract purchase only. Subject to status. T's and C's. 18 plus Vauxhall Finance. Registered by 2nd of April 2020. Search Try Your New Vauxhall.
You don't just live in one room, so why should your Wi-Fi? With Sky Broadband's Wi-Fi guarantee, you'll get Wi-Fi in every room or money back. Perfect for food shopping in the bedroom, gaming in your PJs in the lounge, or streaming sci-fi movies in the kitchen. Get Sky's superfast broadband and Wi-Fi guarantee. £32 a month for 18 months with $19.95 setup. Click on the banner now.
Sky Fibre errors, Sky Kit required. Refund on boost component of subscription paid during current minimum term up to date of claim. Minimum 3 megabits per second or money back. Prices may change during minimum term. See sky.com/guarantee.
Want to hear about the latest and greatest things to listen to on TuneIn? For reminders of the biggest live sports games, debates, and breaking news stories, follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.